is 365 Sports, powered by SicEm365.com.
Here's Vaughn with some room, past the 20, and Vaughn might be gone. He's got incredible speed, outrunning Bama defenders. Inside the 20, Vaughn inside the 10, dives for the end zone. Touchdown, K-State.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Card will hand it off for Roschon Johnson through the car wash. Johnson stays up. Oh, no, he didn't. Touchdown! That is absolutely insane from Roschon Johnson.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
On the right hip and now to the left of Spencer Rattler. Quick throw, intercepted. Jeremiah Trotter heading for the end zone. Touchdown, Clemson.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
3rd and goal. Looking to tie the game. Oh, they get him. DeMarvion Overshown comes in like a missile.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome into 365 Sports. Friday as we head into the weekend, and Craig, I think that if you really broke down how many people in college football media are actually doing stuff today, not half, but like 39 to 42% are in this room. Based on me trying to get guests for the show today, because we're about to have a flurry of stuff next week as Media Days kick off. We'll be at Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday and Thursday next week. One of the people in college football media is not here. You see, Smokey, not here. So, but we do. Fortunately, we got a great super chat from Hayden Maxwell at the very end of yesterday's show and did not have time to get to it because he sent it right in the middle of the top 5, so we could not get to it. So we're going to start off the show with that today. We also have Colin Wilson, who authored those over-unders about the all the teams in the country, but I had some different ones. We're going to break down how he got to those over-unders, or not over-unders, the underdog and favored odds on betting, and why Baylor and Oklahoma State are kind of on opposite ends of that spectrum. Baylor, he thinks, will be favored 10 times. He thinks Oklahoma State will be the underdog 10 times. We'll have Brian Estridge to talk a little TCU with us as they get voted 5th in the Big 12 preseason media poll. And Josh Neighbors, one of our new guys. He's over on Crystal Ball College Football. I was on his podcast last night. He's going to join us today. And we'll just talk all things Big 12 and realignment and whatnot at 4:30. And we're going to replay Phil Bennett at 5 o'clock and then the top 5. So, Craig, let's just dive right into this super chat from Hayden. And thank you so much, Hayden. I hope you do get a chance to see this, and I hope you're watching now. But if not, I hope you get a chance to see it later. He said, Craig and Paul, I'm done talking about realignment. I won't believe it until it happens, but I do have one big question. Give me your best guess at when the final straw for the Pac-12 media deal has to be released. Otherwise, they get raided, schools leave, and they finally dissolve.
Go right ahead if you have a better answer. If you have an answer right now, I have to kind of sit here and think about this for a second.
I would say the final straw is at some point during the season. If they're into the season and this is continuing to drag on, then I think we know what is happening here. I thought that by media days would be the best day to have some sort of answer, because that's July 21st, and George Kliavkoff has to go up and face the media at media days. That's the point. It would be shocking to have a commissioner not go up and speak to the media at media days. So I don't see any circumstance where he doesn't speak to them at all. But for him to not have any answers on the media deal by July 21st would be really tough for the Pac-12 to navigate from July 21st to whenever they do get that media deal. But I do think the last straw, if you really have to look at it, has to be sometime towards, as the season's winding on, because then you're at a point where, you're almost to the end of the football season and you don't know in less than a year what your media rights situation is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a firm deadline really. I don't know. We haven't really touched on it at all, the whole, pushing back. I mean, we talked, San Diego State the day we came back on Wednesday and got into that a little bit and how confusing that whole thing was. And, I still don't rule out that San Diego State could find a way to join the Pac-12 like sooner rather than later. I think that's still very much in their future, just maybe not as quickly as anticipated. But I feel like if something were to get done by July 21st, which is kind of what was suddenly, this new deadline because of media days and all of that, I mean, why did the San Diego State fiasco happen to begin with? Like, if you think it's going to be done in 2 weeks, that you couldn't have, somehow had an idea in the month leading up to that this was soon and, yeah, go ahead and make your exit? Like, does that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if it's going to be done in 2 weeks, they couldn't have had more of an idea to tell San Diego State, like, no, you're free to explore and you don't have to worry about backtracking. But instead, San Diego State explored, got the door shut on them, backtracked, and are now back in the Mountain West for the time being. So, yeah, I don't see how it gets done in the next 2 weeks, unless it just doesn't include San Diego State, which I think that would also be equally shocking. So, yeah, it's I know it's a question that everybody would love an answer to, like a hard answer of, hey, July 28th, if nothing happens by then, like this all goes into effect. But I don't think there's a firm deadline other than, just sometime during the season. And I hate to, prolong it because I'm certainly not trying to, see it go much longer than it already has, but I don't think that there's this has to happen before the season or else. I don't think, beyond what you said of, there is a contract that is eventually due. I do think in the next, few months or at some point during the season would be probably about the last time you'd want to be talking about this. So, yeah, I agree with you on that, but I don't think it's it has to be done before kickoff of game number 1. But, sometime not too long after that, you would hope just for everybody's own sanity that something would happen, not even for a deadline, but everybody's own sanity at that point. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't feel like Media Days is forcing anything, although that would be really nice.
If we get to talking about who the Pac-12 champion is going to be and you don't know what network that game is going to be on a year from now, then I do think you've got a problem. You've got a severe problem. I think that's when the things start to really, get desperate. And not to say that decisions maybe not be made before then, contingent on if we get to this point, then we're going to, as soon as the season's over, just be like, well, I guess we're out of the Pac-12 if you're one of those teams who wants to leave and has a spot to go. But that is the other thing about this is that the Pac-12 media deal, if none of them are going to leave because they just don't have the landing spots to go, or, some of them will, but then you'll just take the media deal that comes along and then there'll be a Pac-12 in some form or fashion, but it'll be different. So I don't know. I don't know if the conference itself is as fatalistic as the world around it yet, but it's got to be probably getting there as to, where the contingency plans are for everything.
Well, based on some advocates, there's no issue at all. This is totally normal, and this is all on a timeline that was, totally normal from the very beginning, and this is all just the status quo. I think that's BS, but whatever. Whatever you got to do to make yourself feel better about it. I think they'd much rather have announced something months ago, no matter how complicated the deal, and avoided a lot of this. But is it really anything to concern yourself with in the long run if you land a deal that's satisfactory? No. So, you put up with a bunch of crap from people for a year and you get what you want in the end. Doesn't really matter. But, the longer it goes, the more crap you hear and the more that people start to doubt themselves. And, sometimes realignment is as much of a mind game thing as it is anything else of just, people getting paranoid, people worrying about their own security. And then that leads to one thing or another. And certainly there was some aspect of that early on, months ago, really, that had heated up the whole, oh my gosh, the conference on the brink, is somebody going to jump? I think a lot of that was intentional. I think some of that was actual paranoia because people were wondering, where the heck is this thing going? But, they've lasted this long. They seem to be nearing a finish line. I know we've said that before, but, at this point, the finish line is like the actual end of the year, and we're getting closer to that than we are to the first half of the year. So you automatically think that, well, naturally you've got to be getting closer. But yeah, I wish we could say it's a week out. but it could be, still months until they actually do announce something, although again, all signs point to it being before that, but we've seen that from their media from, that, like it was in the spring, and then it was in mid-spring, and then it was in late spring, and then it was early summer, and then it was midsummer, and here we are. We're going to be in late summer here pretty soon, so I don't know how much to believe out of anything really at this point as far as timelines go. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what that ultimately looks like and what, if any, sort of things result from that, like a San Diego State expansion ticket or an SMU expansion ticket and, other possibilities. I don't know how strong of chances there are that, anybody else gets a phone call, but those two are still very much in this waiting game. So we wait, and I feel like I've done this show now 15 times saying that very same thing, if not more than that, but that's still the same story as always.
367 days ago, they said that they were beginning TV negotiations, and
it's all according to plan.
So the Big 12 got theirs done in like a 1/30th of that time, as far as getting the a deal. And
to be fair, they basically just re-signed the deal they had. I mean, so that doesn't really take you that long. And Yormark very much was cunning and going ahead and getting them some spots while they could. So we're all very aware of how they moved, and that was smart. It appears, unless the Pac-12 comes out and says, like, well, by waiting, we were able to put together this type of deal. I know that's the hope that probably a lot of their fans and media have to some extent. But, we'll see how great that deal looks on the other end. But as far as security and as far as keeping the conference together, the Big 12 did the right thing, because I think if they didn't have a deal, and the Pac would have already announced by now, surely, then you'd probably have the Big 12 who's sitting there going like, well, where's Kansas going? And where, that would all be going on. The same way it's going on with the ACC, even though there's probably nothing happening there for years to go until something moves. Maybe before then, but again, that could just be years of speculation as of right now, or it could be something in a year. Like, we really don't know. But for the Big 12, we at least know, like, they can all just look around the room and not be paranoid and know what their ticket's going to look like and be, together and feel secure and not have a lot of this, I need to look elsewhere, and oh my gosh, is somebody going to pull the rug out from underneath me? That's what the Pac-12's having to deal with to a certain extent, even though they've all maintained that they're together. They've been together, and at this point, you're not going to not be together when you waited this long. So, again, the entire year of talk about this revolves around the same thing that everybody's still waiting on a year later, and that's whatever that TV deal is. And, can't wait to see it, but still have no idea when that's actually going to come.
Yeah, I would love to see the actual timeline. Like, somebody, like, if there's a historian that follows around George Kliavkoff in these negotiations that says on July 5th, we're starting the deal. And then what happened between that July 5th and 2 days ago that's led them to this point where, okay, this was offered, this and this and this, and this is where it was. And, even if you didn't know who the presidents were that said, well, we don't like that, if it was of the 10 remaining schools, if it was like a 7-3 split, that there were 3 that were fine with it, there were 7 that weren't, and all this down the line, because I'm curious to see how, especially people on the West Coast where the media savvy is supposedly bigger, did not foresee what was coming in the year of media and that is the one thing that is not the Pac-12's fault. The one thing that's not the Pac-12's fault is that all these media companies had their everything hit them all at once, and they're now having to pay for deals they made a decade ago. Or even less than that. They spent a lot of money. They're trying to cut corners where they can, whether it's personnel or whatever. And then if you're the Pac-12, you're the last one at the table to negotiate a deal, and all the corners have been cut that are going to be cut. And now you're sitting there trying to ask for money, and it's a tough thing to do, especially knowing that there are other things beyond you that are a bigger deal. And so that's not their fault that it fell into that time, other than the fact that everybody else has started to renegotiate their deal early when they can, and the Pac-12 really didn't do that. They waited until the last year of it, as where the Big 12, the Big 10, all the other ones had 2 years left in their deal. That's probably where their biggest mistake was.
Yeah, I think we've pretty firmly established in talking about this that they got the rug swept out from underneath them, and the Big 12 jumped in line. Like, that's what happened, and that's why this whole thing even exists to begin with. So yeah, I mean, we can play a lot of like, well, they should have, or they could have, or they would have, or, whatever. But, it is what it is. I mean, at this point, like, you can sit there and say, well, if we'd have, just talked to ABC, or, I mean, it doesn't matter. You didn't, and the Big 12 went and grabbed spots, and you have been, the focal point of realignment Twitter and realignment discussion for the better part of a year now. And, along the way, you could have looked back at all these various things. We should have invited Texas back in the day. We should have invited Oklahoma back in the day. We could have invited Oklahoma State back in the day. If we'd have just accepted Baylor back in the day, like, realignment is nothing new, and the Pac-12 has been plenty involved in it over the years. I mean, they could have had Texas. They could have had a contingent of Texas and OU and Oklahoma State and Texas Tech years and years ago. They could have killed off the Big 12 a couple times, and they didn't. And they, are now potentially paying the price for that, but potentially not. We've seen them get dunked on quite a bit. A lot of that's their own doing, miscalculations PR-wise. But until, you see what that contract looks like, if they turn around, and I know the odds are very slim, but who's to say they don't turn around and, again, like I think I brought this up like 11 months ago, like who's to say that in the end they don't make the move that actually is the move that everybody else ultimately follows, as far as the streaming component of this. Now, I'm giving them a lot of credit, and I don't know why I'm giving George Kliavkoff, that much credit, but, until we see it, in writing, then that's just as possible as whatever, new rumor from somebody is on, they're only going to make like $9 million a year, which is BS, or, anything equivalent to that. Now that, if that were the case, yeah, let's do a deep dive on how they screwed up to get to the point where they were, making that little money, but that's not going to be the case. So, yeah, they deserve some criticism as far as maybe some of the handling, just for those who want to criticize that. But, right now they're still a conference. They're still all together. They're potentially adding, and again, until we see this TV deal, then it's all just speculation. It's all just kind of, the same guessing game that we've been playing all along. But eventually they're going to have to show their cards. Eventually they're going to have to hold them or fold them. They've been holding them for a while now, and we're getting to the point where, there's actually a season upcoming, and there's going to be an end of a season. There's going to be actually like, hey, where are you playing your games in the future? It's just not right now on July the 7th, or maybe even in the next couple of weeks before their media days, or maybe even by the time the first kickoff comes around. But that day is coming, just not soon enough for many of us. And, Dan Patrick, or whoever runs his Twitter account, I don't know how that works for him. Sometimes you see like, it's the whatever show, and it's just some random intern does the actual tweets. So I don't know how Dan Patrick's show Twitter account works. Is that just his Twitter account?
I don't know.
Yeah. It's just DP show, so I don't know if that's actually Dan Patrick or not. But, they put out there yesterday, sources say San Diego State's planning on joining the Pac-12. Conference also hoping to add SMU, with Boise State and UNLV being long shot possibilities. So, put as much credence into that as you want to. But, that's still teasing the San Diego State SMU editions. And, I've found that long interesting because of what that would mean for those two schools and just kind of the dynamics overall. The addition of Boise State and UNLV here is quite interesting, and I think makes for some fun speculation. I don't know how much I buy into that, which is why I certainly wonder who's actually tweeting this. Is it him, or is it like a third co-host on the show? You know what I mean?
I mean, one of those guys could have they could report it and talked about it. And, people call. Dan Patrick has people you can just call and ask directly. I mean,
but this is is unsolicited. This is sources say San Diego State is still planning on. This is a report from whoever's running the account. So, I don't know if that's just kind of the same old that's been talked about, or if there is, smoke, or if that's a PR move. Because don't get it twisted, the Big 12 is not the only one that's had like PR moves made throughout this whole process. Kind of like when you started hearing all of a sudden these Pac-12 presidents all in the same week just coincidentally started all talking at the same time when things got really dire, right? Mm-hmm. So it works both ways. And so, that could be somebody from the Pac saying, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. The big rumor is because they want it out there, or that could be like actually some, inside info. It's hard to tell, over social media.
San Diego State telling him that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you call up somebody
who knows,
calls up San Diego State and goes, hey, well, what's the plan here if you guys did this? And then they say, okay, well, don't quote me on this directly, but, us and SMU want to join the Pac-12. We think that's going to happen eventually. And then Boise State and UNLV are long shots to get there, which would put them, if they lose no one at 14, I would say the reason Boise State and UNLV would be listed as long shot is if they lost anybody.
I don't see it, dude.
Yeah,
I mean, the UNLV thing, I could see just the Las Vegas, the long play there. I know some people try to convince the Big 12, or at least talking to us, the UNLV fans, shout out to you, of why they try to convince us of, why they would be a good addition. And, I understand why. I mean, that's a hustling, bustling place, and sports capital probably of America in so many ways, and will be that the more we just embrace gambling like it was never a bad thing ever, and it's now the greatest thing ever, that will only remain the case and become even more so for Vegas. So if you think that somehow translates to UNLV or trickles down to them, then you hold your media days there. Be a hell of a time to announce UNLV, right? But that I need to see that happen before I'm not gonna buy into that until I see the actual announcement, because I don't know. That just feels like if you were struggling to get a media deal, and all of a sudden because you're adding Boise State and UNLV and SMU and San Diego State, that's what set it off. I don't know, but that would be awfully interesting. And if they were to do that because of where they are, I actually wouldn't hate that. I think Boise's a no-go, though. I don't buy into that. I really don't. I know that their fans would love it and deserve it in so many ways. But I just wonder where the additive is there.
But
the Las Vegas thing, I can see that, although I know immediately be like, they have no fans, nobody cares, the academics or whatever, would be the typical response. But having a presence in Vegas, I can see the logic there.
Yeah, Boise is trying to get ready to be a candidate for those things, and they are close, but I don't think they're in the spot where they could do it. If the Pac-12 called it tomorrow and said you're in, they'd be like, great, but they'd also shut the door and go, okay, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. And look, we know their athletic director really well. Jeremiah Dickey is fantastic. He's a young guy, and is a rising star in the industry. But yeah, they would have a lot of work to do to be ready tomorrow to do that. So I do think,
buddy, if you're not ready now, when are you going to be ready? Because I
guess to start, they're making the progress, but part of it is getting the donations in, making sure, and part of joining a Power 5 conference is not just everything you have, it is making sure that when you hit the ground, you can kind of hit the ground running, as opposed to be behind the 8 ball a little bit more, which you're going to be as a new team anyway, but don't put yourself behind the 8 ball any more than you have to be. I think that's why, they'd like it to be a little bit, further along than they are. And they're close. I think they're close. They could easily do it in a year or so, I think. But if it was one of those things that's hey, we've got to announce this today. I don't know.
I don't know how much a difference a year makes for them. I feel like, you've kind of been on this let's get into the P5, train for a while now. So, I understand you might not have every facility up to date, but as far as a game plan and infrastructure and stuff ready to go, if you don't have it by now, then don't cry when you don't ever get an invite. You've had advanced warning for years now. Same thing for Memphis. Same thing for everybody who's been, San Diego State, BYU. Not everything's going to be perfect, but that, whether everything's ready or whether you're just ready as an entity to make that move is two different things. And so, I would hope that for Boise State's sake, if there's a phone call, they're ready to make that move at a moment's notice, and they'll figure out the rest later. Because I don't know how many more phone calls there are going to be, quite frankly. And, the more we move along here, the more momentum there is for, calling a spade and, separating these teams more than they've probably ever been separated generally, not a Power 5, there's a Power 2. There's not a, and so I feel like we're moving more in that direction. And so, if you're not ready at this point, I don't know when that phone call's coming for you.
And they might be ready. I just know that, they were still in the process of making sure that they had everything.
Yeah, I just don't know if them being ready is still good enough, right, for the Pac.
You got to be wanted, and the Pac also, to take a school like Boise State is going to, which there's nothing wrong with Boise State at all, but it's going to take a lot of humility on their part as well. Is them admitting we need to be in Idaho now. That's going to be a thing that the Pac-12 will have to swallow, because they have been, and that like what part of the reason they're in this spot is they are a little bit, and not that they're the only one, but they're pretty elitist when it comes to what they consider their membership.
Oh, absolutely.
And
that trickles down too.
Yeah, and so because of that, like you're going to have to be like, well, I know all this time that we said that we're not interested in A, B, and C, but maybe we were wrong about that, and that's hard for people at certain levels to do.
Well, I can't relate. I've never been that pretentious in my life and never will be. God, I can't believe we have to announce Boise's in the I just can't relate to that level of nose in the air type of attitude. And maybe it doesn't ever occur anyways because they are of that mindset or because the fit's just not right. I don't know, but that was a report from whoever's running Dan Patrick Show's Twitter account. Would have been nice if his initials were attached and you say, oh, that's Dan, so you can lend a little bit more credence to it. But I don't really know his whole crew. But it's different if it's Dan versus whatever their names are. It's like Paul Pabst or something.
Yeah.
I think is one. I just haven't. I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just haven't.
Andrew Perloff has his own show now. So,
I just haven't checked in a really long time. That's not disrespectful. I just I do give more credence to Dan Patrick himself, and I know he's dabbled a little realignment things here and there. Like I've seen little clips of his show where he's talked about it from time to time, and I don't know what his scorecard is, like how many times it's actually led to something that's legit, or if it's just whispers that come and go and we forget about them. But yeah, I mean that was something that I saw last night. And the UNLV thing, I think, like I said, the Las Vegas play, maybe that's a long-term move. I don't know. But just another thing to throw into the big pile of rumors as this saga, goes on into month 12 now, if not, give or take a little bit longer than that.
Yeah. We're going to replay Phil Bennett later, and I know we have to take a break, but I do want to mention one thing he said that I found it's very funny about decisions you make at a conference that, look, predated George Kliavkoff, but they were paying rent on an office building in San Francisco, which is a really dumb financial move to do. Like, rent's very high there. There's other places you could go have your conference office, even in California, where property value is really high, that you would save millions of dollars than renting a place in San Francisco. Like, honestly, millions upon millions of dollars. And they've moved out of that office and all that. But those decisions where, let's go buy in this neighborhood. Well, like, do you need to be in that neighborhood? Like, I don't know. You could have done the same thing somewhere else and saved a lot of money. I do think George Kliavkoff would probably love to move the conference office to Vegas, completely and have it there. So while real estate values are going up there, it would still be one of those deals. So, all right, when we come back, Colin Wilson, Action Network, joins us, tells us why Baylor could be a favorite 10 times and Oklahoma State could be a dog 10 times. This is 365 Sports.
Make this the summer sales event going on now at Allen Samuels. Shop our large selection of new inventory and get amazing deals on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler minivans, or a sporty Dodge. Shop AllenSamuelsDCJ.com or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Colin Wilson of the Action Network joins us now. And Colin, I imagine that you've had I know you have a couple of shows to do after us today. You've had a lot of requests on this because when you put out these numbers that you run and look at, I mean, this wasn't something I know that you just said, I'm going to throw this at the wall and really make all of Stillwater, Oklahoma mad. But when you got this, I imagine you got a lot of requests for people asking you to break down what you did.
Yeah. I think the information that got out there, the Louisville fans were very happy. They were pounding their chests. Everybody else that's in the ACC was a little, I think, couldn't believe what they were seeing. But, it's a thing where you create a power rating, and that's how you base your win totals for every team. Now, if you're only favored by like 1 point, you're only about a 53% chance to win. So just because it says you're favored like in all 12 games, doesn't mean that you're necessarily a huge favorite to win all 12 of those games. There are teams like, for instance, that are, USC and Oregon is a 1 point game. USC and Washington is a 1 point game. So, there's a lot of those out there, and then it just chips fall down. And Louisville was one of those teams that ended up looking really good.
We'll start here at home because we're doing this show from Waco. You had Baylor as a team you picked to be a favorite in 10 games. Why did you have them in your power rankings that way? What about them says that, even though I know there might be a lot of those might be 1 point games, but what is the positivity on Baylor from you?
Yeah, Baylor got some really positive marks from me from what we call second order win total. And that is, if you lose a bunch of close games that you should have won, then that works in your favor when you do off-season adjustments. I think of that TCU game right away, right? I mean, last second run out there, kick a field goal. That was Baylor's game the entire time. And then they're offensively, Shapen has a lot coming back, especially in the running back, with Richard Reese. And there's just so much talent in that backfield. And then on defense, I know that we're turning to a new defensive coordinator, but that really doesn't matter with the Dave Aranda team. It's going to be multiple. It's going to be a lot of personnel, a lot of different personnel. And they really kind of treaded water as far as from a returning production standpoint and inheriting players from the portal. they were pretty much even on defense. On offense, they took a really big step with a lot coming back. So, they're going to know their identity. Jeff Grimes has been around. He's one of the most innovative offensive coordinators out there. And if Blake Shapen isn't throwing interceptions or fumbling the ball, Baylor's going to have themselves. I mean, last year I went into Big 12 Media Days. They're projected to win everything. This year I'm going in and they have very low expectations, and I think that they will surprise.
Colin, how does that work when riding that line of teams that maybe lost a bunch of close games and expecting them to fare better versus teams like, let's say, a TCU that won a bunch of close games? Does that swing the other way? Like, how do you determine which way that door's swinging?
It does. You're right. And so what you do is we have some advanced box scores where it's not just, hey, the final score was TCU wins by 1 or 2 points. There's also an expected win percentage that you have at the end, right? And it's based upon yards. Like, you could get doubled up in yards, but actually win the game because you were given 6 turnovers. Turnovers are such a huge part of it, right? And it's like USC last year. It's like, I did everything in the world not to downgrade them too much in power ratings because they had 22, 24 net turnovers go their way. So that's a big part of it. So you look at expected win totals, expected win percentage at the end of a box score, and that's how you kind of tally up and say, well, this team won 9 games, but they probably should have won 6. But it really works in Baylor's favor this year. Not TCU so much. They took a lot of licks in my power rating.
How much is that is because their almost entire offense is new and you don't know much about them?
Yeah, I'm an Arkansas Razorback alum, and Kendall Briles is on his way down there, and that is a lot different offense than what Garrett Riley was running. They took, TCU took one of the worst marks from me as far as what they're returning on offense. It's just going to be a boatload of new names back there, from the running back perspective. And the offense is going to change with Kendall Briles a little bit. Garrett Riley taking his schemes and everything to Clemson. So, TCU had one of the biggest knocks in power ratings for me in the offseason. I think I've got them around mid in the Big 12, not to make any disruption whatsoever. And I think if they tread water and win 7 games, it's a really great season for them.
As I'm sure you've seen, there's a lot of love out there for Texas, a big year for the Big 12, and the SEC obviously as well, as there's going to be this move of OU and Texas to the SEC after this season. You've got both Oklahoma and Texas as a favorite in 11 games, and they do have to play each other as well. But can you just kind of give us your thoughts on how they're both positioned? And obviously they're going to usually have a talent advantage over everybody, but why do you also like both of those teams?
Well, it's funny. Like, Oklahoma does play out to be favorites in 11, but more that's a product of the rest of the Big 12 being pretty average this season. We're bringing in 4 new teams that are stepping up, and from a recruiting perspective, they're going to have to step up and play a lot tougher games in the Big 12. And, there's still the West Virginias and the Kansases of the world that are trying to find a defense. So, Oklahoma isn't necessarily a team I'm in love with. It just happens that their power rating is higher than everybody they're facing, with the exception of Texas. So, Texas, I have 2 completely different views on these teams. I think Texas absolutely can make the college football playoff. I think they are head and shoulders above the rest of the league. They are, at least from a recruiting, from a talent, from a portal number of years we've been in the Stark system, or Pete Kwiatkowski on the other end. This is a team that finished top 20 in some of the biggest things that tell us how much we think a college football team is going to do. Success rate. How often are you getting first down? Finishing drive. Texas was 13th last year on offense. If they got past the 40-yard line, they were putting a touchdown up on the board. Offensive havoc. That's how many times do you fumble? How many times do you get stopped in your drive? They were 12th in the nation. I mean, they were the same on defense too. Top 25 in all these metrics. It just needs to play out into wins. It's time to step up in the fourth quarter and execute. Getting beat by TCU was a shock last year, but Texas by far has more talent than anybody else in the Big 12, and anything less than winning the Big 12 and going to the playoff would be a disappointment.
Would you see them winning the Big 12 but not going to the playoff?
If they have 2 losses. We have one more year of this little college football playoff, only four teams, where they've never let a 2-loss team in. They finally let some group of 5s in. It's the college football playoff just has these rules that if you have 2 losses, you're immediately knocked out, and an at-large with 1 loss would get in. So, I don't necessarily think Texas is going to lose at Alabama. I mean, that's really such a huge game for them in terms of college football playoff. It's not a huge game for them in terms of getting to Arlington and winning the Big 12. I am very hard pressed to find enough losses on this Longhorn schedule that keeps them out from getting from Arlington. It just matters if they're going to run the table in conference play and lose to Alabama, or there's a lot of avenues to get to the playoff. They should get to the playoff. I think they have a great chance of upsetting Alabama. So, I've pocketed my own money on the Longhorns winning the Big 12. So I'm ready to back them, even though I never have before.
So why do you like Cincinnati so much? I mean, they're a team that's got the coaching change, the move into the conference, a lot of questions there, but you got them favored in 10 games. What is it about the Bearcats?
Yeah, I'm big on the Bearcats defense. They definitely have proved it year after year. They do have a little bit of a softer schedule. Even though, I think I had them favored in 10 games, I still have their win total around 6. That it goes to one of those things where a lot of the games that they're favored in, it's extremely close. It's within 3 points.
Right.
So I'm not really a big fan of Satterfield, penning apology letters to the Louisville fan base for, interviewing for other jobs. He is a good coach. He was at App State. He was at Louisville, but that fan base never gave him a chance. So I think he's got a chance to kind of surprise here, because there are extremely low expectations. If you look at that Big 12 media preseason poll that came out, they were way down.
And like you said, this is not they're going to win 10 games. They're going to be favored in 10 games, because, when you see that initially, it's like Cincinnati 10, like, whoa, buddy. But, that makes a lot of sense. Oklahoma State.
They have a lot of –
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, they have a lot of games. There's just a lot of games in the Big 12 where, they're very close, because this league is a lot of teams are clones of each other when it comes to a power rating perspective, and not a lot of them are 4 points away from each other. And I'm staring at Cincinnati's schedule now, and there's just a lot of games that are within 4 points.
Oklahoma State is a team that you have right there with them as well. You talk about a mysterious outlook. Gundy's got the track record, but they've got a lot of questions as well. I'm just kind of in general fascinated by the Cowboys and don't quite know what to expect. I mean, you have them as favorites. Again, favorites, not necessarily wins, but do you think they're going to be pretty good versus, like Cincy, where you said you still see them kind of winning 6 games? Is that how you feel about Oklahoma State, or do you think their stock's a little bit higher?
I hate going against Gundy. I really do. This is a guy that's, made 17 straight bowls.
Yeah.
Alan Bowman's coming in, and I remember Alan Bowman back at Texas Tech. The knock on him is that he is an extremely exceptional quarterback when it's a hot read, when he can hit his first target. But when you make him check down, his efficiency really dropped, and he has just not been able to stay healthy. I believe he had that punctured lung while he was at Texas Tech, and we have a new defensive coordinator coming in, and it seems like from an offensive and defensive perspective, we just keep rotating coordinators in and out. There just hasn't been a lot of stability there since Oklahoma State was winning 10 games. And I think the worst thing is this defense finished 119th in tackle grading last year on PFF, and it's just really tough. That just relates back to coaching. And I don't want to count Gundy out, because he always makes a bowl. I think the win total is perfect at 6.5. I project him at 5.9. But at the same time, the portal has changed so much of college football, and some of these coaches have figured it out, and some of these coaches have not figured it out at all. And if you haven't figured out the portal at this point about how to get them to come in, I'm thinking of Brian Kelly at LSU. I'm thinking of Lincoln Riley at USC. There are some teams that have adopted the portal and made it a big part of their identity. Oklahoma State hasn't done that. And, it's going to catch up with everybody in college football that has not adopted the portal and gone after these players.
Yeah, I do. I think Brian Kelly, if you look at it, I think he would be, obviously he's going to gun for like a number 1 recruiting class every year. But if he gets a top 10 recruiting class and a top 5 portal class, then that kind of averages out to where you maybe want to be.
Yeah, and Oklahoma State finished up 22nd in portal rankings, which isn't bad. But on a Power 5 level, you want to be top 20, you want to be top 10. When you have as many holes as they have from last year, Oklahoma State finished 97th in offensive success rate. They had a problem protecting the ball that goes back to the offensive line. Defensively, they have become less aggressive year in and year out since Colin Oliver was a freshman. Gundy's got to turn it around here, but not the kind of guy that I want to go against to put my money against, because he's proven everybody wrong so many times before.
What team in the middle of your power rankings do you think nationally that will, even though they might be like Tennessee, you have 41st. They have very lofty expectations for themselves this year, obviously. But who do you think is that team that could be, the TCU of this year?
Oh boy, TCU was an interesting case. I took a Big 12 future on them at 20-1, and I, went down and talked to Sonny Dykes at Big 12 Media Days, and I asked him. I said, "Coach, you're going to win the Big 12, but what are you going to do in that SMU game?" And then so, he was happy to hear that I had him picked to win the Big 12. But if there's a team that I think is not getting a lot of love, and they probably should be, it would be Auburn over in the SEC. And I'm a big believer in Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze was just at Liberty, went into Arkansas's home turf and beat them on their own turf. Hugh Freeze was at Ole Miss and beat Saban twice when Alabama was peak Alabama. This guy knows how to coach. He's got the proper coordinators, and Auburn brings back everybody on offense, which includes Jarquez Hunter, running back. He's one of the most elusive running backs in all of the nation. They pulled Peyton Thorne, a quarterback from Michigan State, who's excellent at play action. He has a very high adjusted efficiency rating on passes over 20 yards. And then they've got a backup quarterback, Robbie Ashford, who was there before, that can run the RPO. They have players to run every kind of offense that Hugh Freeze wants to run. And everybody's just shutting Auburn out from even thinking about them because of, what happened there last year and firing your coach midseason, letting Cadillac take over. Auburn's not getting enough love in the market whatsoever, and I am not positive that I believe that Alabama has figured out their problems, nor do I think Texas A&M is anywhere out of the weeds with their quarterback situation. So I think Auburn's really the team to look at from a long shot standpoint.
Yeah, no, I think they're going to be fascinating there with good old Hugh Freeze. That's going to be an interesting little experiment. I want to rewind just a second, though. So you had 20-1 TC to win the Big 12 last year. So does that mean that, what was that like when they're sitting there knocking on the doorstep of the goal line and coming up just short?
Well, they made the Big 12 championship game. I believe the whole month of November, it was sweat free, right? I knew they were going to be in the Big 12 championship. I was like, this is the greatest bet ever. I placed this bet in March, and now I just get to free roll November because they're going to make it. But when they got there, there was a pretty hefty bet. When you have, and if you want to do the math on whatever your bet size is, you have a 20-1 hanging in your pocket, and it comes down to a single game, and the spread on that game is nearly a pick. That's going to allow you to hit the other side, which I was more than happy to take a piece off of Kansas State and say this is going to be one heck of a payday. So it was actually a very sweat-free championship game, and that's kind of why you attack these early markets and want to get down conference futures, because you get into these conferences like the Big 12 where it's round robin. Getting into the championship game, you don't need them to be first. You just need them to get into that second slot, and then they got to fight and chance.
Is the Pac-12 going to be, in what's the last year of this iteration of it, maybe the best season they've had in a long time, when you've got Oregon, Utah, Washington, 5, 6, 7, and then USC at 14th?
There was never a version of Colin Wilson that came out and backed Texas football in the entire Pac-12, but here I am. I love the Pac-12. Minus Stanford and Colorado. Every other team, I absolutely love what they're doing. Washington, they led the nation last year in a stat called available yards, which is if you start on the 20-yard line, you can achieve 80 yards. Washington led the nation in available yards. But the 3 and 4 teams in the nation were Oregon and USC, which makes this conference just so unbelievably fun to watch because, these teams all the way down to Oregon State. If you cannot defend the run, DJ Uiagalelei, Damian Martinez, Deshaun Finham, Oregon State can run the ball, drain clock. It's going to be such a fun conference to watch. Do they cannibalize each other is the problem. I would hope that we can get a conference champ with one loss, get the Pac-12 in the playoff before we expand, because they really do have some quality teams. The best TV is going to be late at night with some of these Pac-12 teams. But no, I truly believe the Pac-12 is going to be very improved.
Colin Wilson, Action Network HQ. Colin, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you hopping on the show. You'll be at Media Days on Wednesday?
I'll be there.
All right, we'll see you there.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Colin Wilson, Action Network HQ. That was great stuff. They're really interesting. And again, we don't do a lot of betting-oriented stuff here because it is not anybody in here. Maybe Levi. It's in his wheelhouse. I don't know.
What are you talking about? We'll sell out. I'll flash like I bet every day of my life. You throw in the dollar signs out there.
Like if FanDuel calls, I'm picking up the phone before it finishes the first ring.
Yeah.
But yes, but we don't do a lot of it because again, we'd have to get experts on because we're not by any stretch of the imagination gambling experts.
Right. So. Yeah. I think there's I think we have a hard time being phony because we could definitely just wing it, although you'd probably see through that pretty quickly for those that know what they're doing. But, it's a market that's been saturated, I feel like, where everybody's got picks, and hey, if you got them, hey, flaunt them. I have nothing against that. But, yeah, that's just not been my forte ever, nor have I pretended it to be, and just haven't really delved into that realm all that much. But there's obviously a huge market for it. And sports are flocking to it in every way they possibly can right now. But just in general, to hear his reasoning, and, when you see that list initially and you're like, wait a second, Oklahoma State, 10 wins. No, 10 games they'll be favored in. You hear why, and it makes a lot more sense. And that's why it's good to look past just the article and actually pick his brain a little bit on it, because it makes sense once you hear it the way that he laid it out of, they might be like a half a point favorite, so technically, they're favored. I mean, it's still hard to imagine that Oklahoma State's like a favorite in 10 games, but because I can see the Texas thing. I mean, the Texas, look at their schedule right now. The only team you'd pick against them really favored-wise, not like you actually think they'll win, but favored, it'll be Alabama. That's the only one.
In Tuscaloosa, too.
Yeah, that's the only one. And then for Oklahoma State, I don't know if I get 10 out of there, but at least it makes sense rather than saying he's predicting they're going to win 10 games. Like when you see Cincinnati at 10, like no way in hell are they winning 10 games. Okay, they're favored. All right, look at the schedule and you can kind of see how that happens. So good to have some details on what he's going for there.
I could fake my way through gambling better than I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but very early in my career, I was on a morning show and we had an advertising deal with Texas Motor Speedway, and they had a radio show that we ran every Saturday morning, and the guy that hosted that show would come on my show like every Thursday to do a NASCAR segment, and I know next to nothing about NASCAR. Like, I know drivers. I know who they are. I'm not completely ignorant to it, but if you want to get me in the weeds about NASCAR, I cannot do a very productive interview about it. If you want to sit me down with Richard Petty and I can do some research and ask him some historical questions and interesting things, I'd probably do a great job with that. But week to week, the goings-on of the roundy round, I can't do it. And so what I had to do so I didn't sound like a complete buffoon was I would go to the NASCAR website, and I would basically just take the headline and be like, oh, man, just a mess at Talladega this week, Brad. How does Jeff Gordon and his team rebound from this as we get down the stretch of the playoff? I mean, there's points at the line here. And then he would just take it and run with it, and he knew what I was doing, so it wound up being a fine segment. But afterwards, I was like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I felt like Will Ferrell in Old School, where he just like snapped out of the trance after he beat James Carville in the debate. I just didn't know, because I was like, all right, great. Good. That's good to know about Tony Stewart. And then I kind of move on, because sometimes you have to do those things. It's tough to do.
Yeah. We don't do that on this show, though.
No.
Don't BS you like that.
No.
But, yeah, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. And I don't know. We had a gambling sponsor on the old show at one point, and, it wasn't the most fun thing in the world, because it just reeked of ripoff. Like, honestly, it wasn't like, this is BetMGM and blah blah blah, and it's all stylized. This was Vito in the Bronx. Like, he's got a hotline number, and it was given no like, well, just ask questions. Like, you got to be more. You don't just have a guy coming on call and just randomly throw questions out there. You got to have like some sort of structure there, and there was no structure to it each week. Sometimes he was on, sometimes it was just very. Well, it left a very bad impression, to the point of like, I understand they're paying money, but like this isn't.
Well, two years ago, we had a gambling sponsor, and I was thrilled because they were one of my clients. And I was like, great, we got into this world. And I said, you need to give me a guy. Like, who's your best guy that you can come on that's great on the radio? And they gave me a dude in Vegas who honestly sounded like he was we had him on 4 times before I said, look, I told him, like, I can't do this anymore. This
right,
is a really bad segment. And I would say, hey, Barry, I'm just looking at your lines on the website here, and you've got Texas, a pretty heavy underdog. And he'd be like, yeah, the quarterback's hurt. And I'm like, all right, thank you. I hope you're okay, but it's just one of those things. And then we had one forever, a guy who was great on our show, but he has a deal with another company now. Otherwise, he'd probably be on with us even today. But yeah, it's hard, because I think it's one of those things. There's like 2 kinds of like the the betting analysts. There's guys who are so, like Colin, who are so good and so in depth and can explain the things to everybody who's not in the betting world, who's just interested and want to hear why these things are, like you and I. And then there's the guys who are like, hey, I got a -3. I think I take that line.
Yeah.
I do what I do. You do what you want to do. You know what you want to do, And then it's like, I don't know if this is the guy I want to be talking to right now to make myself.
I think he's just trying to steal my money.
Yeah, exactly. I remember the guy. I'm now hearing the guy.
Yeah, it was
in my head.
Yeah, and the person who set it up wasn't the most helpful, and it just felt like a scam, and I didn't like it. And you know what? I'm not just going to go along with that. So after a while, I protested, and I think that they eventually just slid off, and I don't know how much money that was. I mean, it couldn't have been like, if it was enough money, we were going to just have to grin and bear through it, but this just was never felt legitimate, and it felt really kind of icky, and that's not the case. You're right with a lot of but you do have to be mindful of that sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. They would, and they had a show that was like a 30-minute show we ran on Sunday mornings, and it was just them ripping each other.
Oh, yeah.
And like between, they're like, Pepperoni Steve doesn't know anything. Pepperoni Steve doesn't know. He could get hit by a bus. Nobody knows. He's an ugly guy, Pepperoni Steve. And you're like, well, Dallas and the Giants today? Like, what's your take on that before I make my bet? Pepperoni Steve doesn't know anything. So, yeah, it was just bad. It was just bad. When we come back, a guy who knows a lot, our good friend Brian Estridge, voice of the TCU Horned Frogs, joins us next. This is 365 Sports.
Cars priced right both day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Why did you get into this business?
We kind of were born into it, and it's been for several generations. Our family's been in the beef business, the ranching business, and we've specifically got into the beef business back in about 2015 when me and my son decided to form Texas Beef House and sell directly to the public.
Aaron, everyone knows about Wagyu and how elite that is when it comes to beef. What separates you from anyone else that may do this in this type profession? We selected out Wagyu mainly because it's such a quality beef, and it's consistent. Some beef, some breeds, you may have a good animal every now and then, but Wagyu produces really consistently good beef every time. Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel & Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel & Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel & Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker rooms, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
We are awaiting our good friend Brian Estridge, as I think Zoom has to update on both ends every time you open it up. It's ridiculous. But yeah, we're going to have him via Zoom here in a second. Josh Neighbors, Crystal Ball College Football, the Neighborhood Watch. I was on that podcast last night, and I thought, you know what? It's time we cross-promote. And what a better day for it than July 7th right as we get right before Media Days. And we'll be at Big 12 Media Days on Wednesday and Thursday. And, Craig, Brett Yormark's shaking up another thing in that his State of the Union isn't until noon on Thursday, which usually it was the first thing off the first day of media days at about 9 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And so I like that. I like that, we're not just getting set and then everybody has to scramble to go listen to the commissioner. A guy that I've never wondered about scrambling to go listen to because I don't have to. I'm always prepared. Brian Estridge, voice of TCU Athletics, with us here via Zoom. Brian, thanks so much for hanging out with us today on the show. We'll get to see you next week in Arlington. Is it strange to be the best team in the conference one year and then the next year be ranked 5th in the media poll because there's a lot more unknowns than normally would be coming off of a national championship game run?
Yeah, good to see you, Paul and Craig. I was disappointed that David's not there because I think I saw his ballot, and I think he had Texas 1 and Oklahoma 2, and I was going to ask him about that. A little surprising, yeah. I mean, But haven't we become accustomed to this? So, I mean, isn't Texas always picked high and overrated and fine? It's almost a case where you go, you know what? I got the preseason ballot. Do I even vote this year? Because we know that Texas is going to be picked highly, and everyone's going to say, look at the talent, look at the roster, but you got to take into account everything. And we know that. So, yeah, I mean, I think that I think there are a lot of question marks in this league. I think that last year we had a ton of questions heading into it, and maybe we have a little more answers this year. When you look at a team like Kansas State, and I still think that TCU is going to be a quality team, and everybody tells me Texas is going to be world beaters. So maybe that answers some of that, but. Yeah, I think that might have actually played into Sonny Dykes' hands, to be honest with you, fellas, when he saw that preseason poll.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, I guess the good news is this the last time we have to see them get overrated in those polls because they won't be in there after this year, so we'll be saved from that. But in regards to TCU and just the monstrous year they had, an amazing run. How have you seen that, whether it be recruiting, just general enthusiasm, support, belief? In what all ways have you seen that season already start to pay dividends for this program?
I think you've touched on all of them there, Craig. I mean, the one thing about this team is that they realize how close they were. And they have not lost sight of that. I mean, you see it in the shirts that they're wearing, working out. You hear it in the conversations that they have in the hallway. You saw it in spring practice, to be quite candid with you. I mean, this was a team that knew that they had left something on the table. And, everywhere you went this summer and you ran into coaches, it was funny. I was in North Carolina in an event a couple of weeks ago and ran into a Division I coach who came up to me, a head football coach, and he said, man, Sonny did that in his first year. What's he going to? How do you follow that up? And coaches are saying that, but I think this team thinks that there's a lot to follow up, and that there's a lot to expand on. Now, does the win-loss total look the same? Maybe not. But I think they can be better. From a talent standpoint, for one thing, I think this roster has been upgraded by Sonny Dykes and his staff. I think they're excited to see what Kendall Briles can do offensively with some of the talent that this group has. And then let's just face it, you guys know this. You went through it with Dave. I mean, another year in the system for this defense has got to be good. They were kind of learning on the fly at times last year. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they're poised to have a solid season. I think people are excited about it. I think the league is going to be great. And what I did, by the way, Craig, this year is I just voted for 12 teams. I didn't on my poll. So I went ahead and moved on.
I like that. Go ahead and just get with it. Yeah. Don't get stuck in the past. Absolutely. Yeah.
Brian, I guess the biggest question would be, how quickly does the offense gel with so many new starters? Like, how does that work? And that is something that you can't know until they play against somebody else in different shirts. But what do you see from Chandler Morris, the new wide receivers, the new offensive linemen? I mean, it is, 8 or 9 new starters for sure across the board. And then you've got guys that may have contributed last year that are in that. But, I mean, most of that offense is on to the next level right now.
A lot of it, you and I think we talked about this maybe after spring practice. I think maybe I came on with you guys then. The one thing that did sort of surprise me, and I was out there every day for spring, was that there were more players back than I thought. Because I was kind of under the impression, maybe I was, with the number of guys that were drafted, or the number of guys that had left, and what could have been a senior class, because you never really know any more about COVID. I was thinking, man, this roster is going to be depleted. And then I walked out there, and on offense, I see, Savion Williams at wide receiver, and I see Chandler Morris, who obviously started the season. But you got Amani Bailey and Trent Battle, who had played a little bit at running back. And, they weren't necessarily the 1-2 guys, and we know that. But, and then you had some offensive linemen. The 2 tackles were back. And Coleman and Coker, and then the Jared Wiley, the tight end. So it wasn't quite as, bare as I thought, to be honest with you, Paul. But what I do think you saw were some new guys that raised the level a little bit. J.P. Richardson, you guys know him. I mean, Bucky's boy, who's was at Oklahoma State. I didn't see him drop a ball all spring. JoJo Earl is a dynamic playmaker, who transfers from Alabama. Trey Sanders, the running back from Alabama, he walked by me and I went, "Oh, that's what it's supposed to look like." Yeah. I mean, this is a big body, fast, sort of get after it kind of guy. Patrick Willis is a transfer offensive lineman, but then you got guys that you kind of you plug in that say, okay, now it's your time on an offensive line. Garrett Hayes and John Lands are a couple of guys that come to mind. Hey, now it's your time. You got some wide receivers. That Major Everhart is a guy that we keep hearing about that's going to be a dynamic player. So, yeah, is he going to take some time? Yeah, undoubtedly it will. Can that get done, though, in August? I think there's a shot based on what you do have coming back. And let's not forget that, when we talk about new faces anymore in college football, we're not talking about 17-year-old freshmen. We're talking about guys that got snaps under their belt at other places. In this case, you got snaps under your belt at at Alabama, and you got snaps under your belt at Oklahoma State and Memphis. So all of a sudden you got guys who can play at other places. So I'm anxious to see it. I'm kind of with you, Paul. I do think that there has to be some gelling that occurs on this offense. It's going to be interesting to see how long that takes.
So, Brian, when it comes to Kendall Briles, and obviously Sonny's an offensive guy himself, so it's always an interesting dynamic when you have the head coach and how they work with the coordinator who's, of their expertise. It obviously worked really well with Garrett Riley, who's now, seen his stock rise, and he moved on to Clemson. But with Kendall And there's tons of familiarity that he has on that staff. He's back in Texas, and he didn't necessarily have everything that he would probably have liked to have had at Arkansas. How have you seen him kind of come in and acclimate himself, and what's that sort of relationship like as far as the offense goes with he and Sonny, and what you kind of expect that'll differ from, what we saw a lot a year ago? Because obviously the personnel being different, Chandler was Max Duggan's going to create differences as well.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, just a side note, I think Max would have loved this offense.
Oh, yeah.
I think he would have loved Kendall's. I think he would have excelled in it because you do have, that element of the run game with the quarterback that's so important to Kendall. I since it's just the three of us talking, I'll be candid with you, fellas. When Kendall took the job, obviously I was like, I wonder. I wasn't in the. I hate everything Bryles camp. I never was that, but I was like, oh, how's this going to work? What's this dynamic going to be like? How will fans react? How will players react? How does this all? And the more I was around him, the more I got what Sonny was saying. And that was, hey, you got to give him a chance. You got to give him a chance. You got to give him a chance. He said, I think that the cool thing about Sonny Dykes is he had built up equity, obviously, in last year's season. And with that equity, he said, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. And I know I've known Kendall Brown since he was a kid. I know what he's all about. I know what he brings to the table. So here, I'm cashing in my equity. I'm bringing in Kendall Browns because that's what I think is the best coach for what we need: a quarterback coach and coordinator who can come in with the personnel that we have. And I really respected how he kind of stood his ground on that. And not that there was ever any question about whether or not it was going to happen, but you guys saw how goofy fans reacted. They were up in arms at first. Well, now that you've gotten to know him, and now that you watch the spring, and now that you see how these players react to him, and now that you meet his family, and now that you all of a sudden you go, well, okay, I get this. I see what Sonny Dykes was doing, and as he said when he first took the TCU job, players had to realize that there was a method to the madness. I think that's got to be the same here with TCU fans, with Kendall Browns. You got to realize that there's a method to the madness of bringing him in. Now, what is interesting, and I love kind of not poking the bear, but I do like asking the question periodically, and you bring up a good point, is Kendall's offense is different than Sonny's offense. Mm-hmm. I mean, Sonny's an air raid guy. Kendall's got, there's a little bit of air raid tendency in it, but it's not the air raid, pure and simple.
Right.
So that has been interesting. But, Sonny really loves his short passing game. And he talked about that, and he said that's one of the things that the air raid lacks. And so maybe if you combine the best of the two, that's what you're kind of hoping for, right? That's what happened when they formed Reese's Buttercups. So if you can get the best of the two and put them all in one, then we might have a hit here.
I've never heard a player that I know that Kendall coached on offense complain about the system. They all loved it. Now, I've heard defensive players complain about practicing against it to no end on how hard that was. But, yeah, that is something and it is, of the places that Kendall's been since he left here, this to me is by far the best fit for him because of what they're trying to do, because it always felt to me the other stops, it was, well, let's see if we can do this here, as opposed to Sonny knows exactly what he wants to do, and he knows exactly who he wants to do it, as opposed to what I think FAU, FSU, and Arkansas were doing is, we're going to try to do this here. Let's go get a guy we think can do it, and like Kendall can, but it wasn't ever, here's, we're going to, especially I'll tell you at FSU, they just did not let the reins off, which made no sense to me. But they weren't ever completely invested in it. It was like one of those things where it's like, well, let's see what happens. And that's not the case in Fort Worth.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really cool is, and I don't know if it was you or Craig who brought it up, is, did he have all the weapons that he needed? Did he have all the tools that he needed? He's got that here. I mean, Sonny has turned over the reins to him. You look at the staff; it's guys that he knows that he's been associated with. You look at the quality control guys, or whatever we call them this week in college football. Analysts. I never had a cool title like any of that stuff. like 24 with he's running around with these great titles. Anyway, they're all his guys. I mean, this is what he wants to do, and let's face it. I mean, you got to kind of also look at Chandler Morris as a guy grew up watching this system, grew up playing in this system to a degree there. I mean, so it's kind of it could be the perfect storm for this offense right now.
So I remember watching college football kickoff last year, and TCU and Colorado were playing, and it wasn't an awfully memorable game. It wasn't even that great of a game really at times, and we know what happened with Colorado and TCU. They went very separate ways. But they're going to rematch or play the other side of that agreement, and it's got a wildly different look this time because of who's going to be roaming the Buffalo sidelines. Everything Deion is magnified and bigger and all of that, but how much sizzle does that put on their opener playing Colorado to have you not only have the backdrop of like the realignment stuff, give or take that, but the Deion factor. How much more electricity do you think that brings to that opener?
Oh, unbelievable. I mean, you had TV networks fighting over it. You have, can we break news here that I think, and I didn't hear this from TCU, but I know that it's in the discussion for game day, so I mean, you got that going on, big, what's the Fox show? Big, whatever Saturday.
Big noon kickoff.
Yeah, I mean, they were, those guys were all kind of fighting over it. They wanted that game. And so, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a crazy atmosphere. I mean, you guys know that. And I have no idea what we are in for on that day as far as, participants watching. I have no idea what Colorado's in for this season with Prime. I mean, it's either going to be amazing or a train wreck. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's anywhere in between. And so, and I think we find out at kickoff. And so it's got to be the hardest team in America to scout for, though, isn't it? I mean, with all the new faces.
Absolutely.
35 new guys since spring. So you can't even use the spring film to learn anything about them.
I called Mark Johnson, who's the terrific play-by-play guy there. And I said, hey, Mark, I'm trying to get a head start on you guys. And he said, well, you're ahead of me. Because I got no idea. Because I said, hey, can you help me at all on the 2D? No, I have no idea. I don't even know numbers. I mean, and that's just, I think that's what we're going to battle here. But I do think it also creates a sense of anticipation, but it also creates a sense of urgency that I think that coming off the year that you had last year at TCU. And I think this might be really good for them to have a sense of urgency. I think it's better they roll out against the Colorado with Prime than it is if you rolled out, against, Tarleton. They played Tarleton last year. I just think it's better. You get what I'm saying? I mean, I don't know if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I think comes with that I think will be good for them.
Well, I mean, Prime versus the national runner-up is a way better game, right? That. I mean, I don't need to know the 51 new guys. I don't need to know that. I need to know Deion. I need to know Sonny Dykes. Trying to make it. Trying to do it again. Like that's all I need to see for me to be excited about it. By the way, Deion back with Nike today, officially, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh,
yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Colorado Nike school. All of a sudden, Deion Nike again. Imagine how that works.
Well, and by the way, let's don't demean what could have been the matchup TCU and Tarleton. I mean, it is Todd Whitten's last year at Tarleton. We know that. So that could have. But you're right. Maybe with Prime, it is a little bit of a higher stature.
Yeah,
just a little bit. just a little bit.
Just a little bit. All right, Brian. We talked about Chandler. You talked about Chandler Morris throughout. He had, such a weird thing where an injury that he came back from, but wasn't the starter again, but never kind of wavered in that. Many guys would have just been in the transfer portal out of spite, right? Because they lost the job, and no matter what the success, been like, well, I guess there's no future for me here because of that. What about Chandler Morris enabled him to stick through with Sonny Dykes and not do what many guys would do and be like, well, I guess I'm going somewhere else next year?
I think it has a lot to do with his mom and daddy. I'll be honest with you. I think it's how he was raised. And you're going to say, well, wait a minute, he's already left one school. Yeah, but that was different. I mean, that was, you weren't really in the mix there too much. You had coaching change, things of that nature. I think that I think this says a little bit about Chandler. I think also he realized, a couple of weeks into this thing, hey, I can learn a little bit from Max Duggan. And I'm not talking about how to throw the football. I'm just, there is, and I know you guys get tired of hearing it, but there is a specialness about Max when it comes to leadership. And I think that Chandler really kind of learned from him on that. He watched how he handled himself with players and with coaches, and with fans and on campus, and was cordial and gracious and open and transparent. I think all those sorts of things really registered with Chandler, and I think that's why. I think that's played a big role in why he stuck around. I'll be honest with you. I mean, there is something to be said about that, and so, and not to mention the fact that, hey, you last year was kind of an odd thing in that you lose your start at the beginning of the year and you get a guy who kind of makes it through the rest of the year. But in college football anymore, especially these offenses are put together now. It's hard to make it through a whole season with one quarterback. And so, I think he always knew that, hey, there may be a possibility that I'm right back in there. So let's stick to it here. Plus, I think the roster coming back helps. I think he saw the talent that he's got coming back. And so I think that all adds up.
Brian, we'll see you Wednesday, man.
Promise?
I promise. Right.
Is Craig covering the tab again?
Yeah.
I got you guys. Don't worry about it. I got you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you, fellas.
All right, see you. Brian Estridge, voice of TCU Athletics, with us. We'll see him again. He'll be there at Big 12 Media Days. But it's interesting stuff to hear about TCU because, again, it's not a rebuild by any stretch of the imagination, but what we see when they roll out will be completely different than what we saw at the end of last year as far as personnel and offense, for the most part.
Yeah. I mean, he outlined like how there's not really as many changes, but yeah, there's a lot of name guys that are gone, from Quentin Johnston to Travius Hodges to, Darius Davis to Kendry Miller to Max Duggan to a lot of their O-line, Steve Avila. I mean, on and on and on, but they do have, some good defenders coming back. I don't think defense will be too much of an issue. I just think the thing that you can't really, and I know that Kaz Kazadi actually trains for it, but it's just the mental side of it and the fact that they won so many close games last year. Dude, they could have had 4 or 5 losses. I mean, really, they could have had 4 or 5 losses, and they ended up going unbeaten until the Big 12 championship game. And then we know the Georgia game, I wasn't even going to bring that up with Brian because it's what's the point? We all know what happened there, that murder on live television. But I just think that they're all in a perfect spot where they're at an institution in Texas that they all know really well, starting with Sonny on down, in a league they all know very well, in a time where you can get really talented players at a moment's notice to fill holes that otherwise might take you a year or two to develop a guy to fit. And now you can get a guy who's second string on Alabama's roster and to come in and just slide in as a starter for you. So I just think the way the current landscape is and that accumulation of guys and the setting, I don't see a big fall off for them this year or any other year, really. I think that they're going to be right there competing each year at the top of the Big 12. I don't know how many teams year in and year out are going to be doing that, but it's going to be a fascinating league because, I don't think Baylor's going anywhere. I think they're certainly not going to let themselves slide. If Dave Aranda were to get off the rails, I think they'll make a move. They have to if they feel like that's what they need to do. Texas Tech's all in. The new schools, obviously, they want to win very badly. Oklahoma State's not just some pushover. They've been as more consistent than any other school in the entire league other than Oklahoma. And think about this. If it wasn't for Oklahoma, how differently are we talking about Oklahoma State? And I know that's a game you could be well, if Mac Brown didn't play Bob Stoops, he'd probably have 4 national titles. So I understand that you could do that what if with everybody. But you really think about it, how much has Oklahoma State suffered from maybe having more glory because of that one damn game every year in Bedlam where you just basically could never win that game. I think his mark is 3-15 or something crazy like that. And we're talking losses where they were leading the Big 12, or they could have gone to the playoff, or had a better postseason spot. So I think Oklahoma State's not going anywhere. And, it's just going to be a fascinating league. But I do think TCU is as well set up as anybody right now to do some damage and to remain near the top. And I do think they'll reload more than they'll rebuild. And I'm just fascinated to see what, Kendall Briles back in the Big 12 and working alongside Sonny Dykes looks like. Because, we got to see kind of the early part of that. And I know his dad's still helping him. I don't have any doubt about that. I think I saw a comment the other day from a TCU person who, he was in the offices at one point, and that could have been just, bringing flowers or something. I don't want to delve all into that. But when we did see Kendall, his dad still very much was, the head coach and, was as much a part of the offense as anybody. He's now been at 3 other schools. He's learned a lot. He's worked with Lane Kiffin. He's worked with, a number of different players and coaches. So being back in the Big 12 after all that time and what he's learned, and now probably being in as much of a situation as close to a situation as the one he was in when he was last in the Big 12 as you could possibly have without having the entire cast together. But, there's Koskazati. There's Carlton Buckles. There's I think there's one more coach maybe I'm missing out on. But, just the feel of it, the private school part of it, everything's kind of similar. It's just the rival that you were playing. Now you're a part of it, and all these years removed, I'm wondering, what that all looks like, and it's going to be fascinating to see.
I'll give you another note. People maybe don't realize about Kendall Briles and what TCU is getting here. Kendall Briles recruited Jordan Travis out of the transfer portal at FSU and got him there. He saw that when not a lot of other people did. And he also developed and recruited KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. So in those 2 of those 3 stops, FAU was only a year, there with Lane Kiffin, and that, they're kind of doing a different thing. But when he was at 2 big boy schools, FSU and Arkansas, he went and got game changer type quarterbacks. He hasn't had to do that yet at TCU because they already had Chandler Morris, but that's something I'm curious to see as well at TCU when it comes to that position and what he does there. When we come back, Josh Neighbors, the Neighborhood Watch over on one of our other channels, Crystal Ball College Football. He joins us. We'll talk all things upcoming Big 12, a little bit of realignment, and more. This is 365 Sports.
The future's bright, the time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Don's Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don's Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective, good Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
Welcome back, 365 Sports. Josh Neighbors, now part of the 365 Sports family on the Crystal Ball College Football Channel, of which Garrett and Jack also have a podcast, the College Football Chaos Podcast, which is Wednesdays at noon. Josh's show is up by 2 o'clock every day, if not before. And I was on Josh's podcast last night, so I thought, what a great way. Let's cross-promote on either channel back-to-back days. Josh, thanks so much for hopping on short notice today, especially Big 12 media poll out yesterday. Texas picked first. Are you buying the Longhorns as the eventual conference champion?
Yeah, there's a combination of things here, and it's great to be on the channel. It's great to be with the network. I'm very happy to be here, so thank you guys so much. It's a combination of things, right? It's a strength in the league thing. It's also this team is just so talented, and they're going through what is a pretty natural winning progression. Winning is not linear. A lot of times in college football, theirs kind of looks like it might be, right? Stacking talent, getting better on the line of scrimmage, 5-7, going to 8-5 last year. It kind of all makes sense. So I'm buying it. I'm buying the fact that quarterbacks get better as they get older. I think Will Howard's a great example of that last year. Max Duggan, a great example of that. Quinn Ewers not quite that much experience, but I think it's reasonable to think that, you'd have to play pretty poorly to screw up this array of talent that they have. I mean, they're so loaded at all of the skill positions. And they're also on defense too, pretty deep. It was a good unit last year. They've got playmakers at all 3 levels. So I think it's pretty reasonable to think that this Texas team should be in Arlington. It'd be a massive disappointment, in my opinion, if they did not make the Big 12 championship game.
Josh, did you pick them as your Big 12 favorite in the media poll?
I did. Yes, I had them 1, Kansas State 2, I think, which most folks had.
Yeah. What about your? I don't want to go through our entire teams here, but I am curious about the QB1 spot. Were you a Quinn Ewers guy? Were you a Jalen Daniels guy? A Will Howard? How did you view that?
So, because I was talking to some folks about this, I'm not sure how you all do it. Some folks think it's a predictive thing.
Right.
I don't know if it's predictive or if it's I still struggle with this. Is it the best quarterback going into the year? If you made me pick one quarterback that I had to have, I'd pick Jalen Daniels.
Okay.
I picked my offensive player of the year to be Quinn Ewers because that is a stupid amount of talent to have around you. And Jalen Daniels does not have that luxury. Now, he might put up some really ridiculous numbers. But the thing is, if they win 6 games again, which I think is challenging, considering Kansas is still not that good, relative to, the rest of the league, I think. Do you give a guy on a 6-win team offensive player of the year or stuff like that? So if I do QB1 right now, I think Jalen Daniels is kind of the best, but I went hybrid. So I did Will Howard, right? I think they're going to win enough. And I think he's a good enough player to where it kind of satisfies both criteria. So I went with Will Howard as kind of the guy I like the most heading into this year, also on a winning team.
Josh, was anybody snubbed in your opinion on that Big 12 team?
I mean, I didn't see any spot where I was like, oh, it shouldn't be there. I think pretty much like across the board, I was fine with every selection. And I don't get really that upset about the preseason polls and whatnot. I think maybe for the predictive of where people finish, there's some stuff. I mean, Oklahoma third felt gratuitous. I think that was Oklahoma being third, but when it comes to the actual teams themselves, nothing really caught my eye as too much as slanderous, if you will.
So there's a lot of schools of thought on Oklahoma and where to slot them or what to expect from them. And I'm a fan, and I don't quite know what to expect. I see all the reasons to believe, starting with the schedule and just having a year under their belts, why they should be improved. I also see the reasons to believe that there's some cracks in the foundation for the first time in 2 decades that are actually maybe dangerous. Where do you kind of fall on that line with Oklahoma and entering the final year of the Big 12?
So the one thing that they're trying to do is establish an identity. And you heard about a lot of this when it came to like their approach in practice and whatnot, especially on defense. You heard a lot about a lot of positive change in terms of like habits and whatnot, but that did not manifest itself on the field last year for them. Their defense after that Nebraska game was a complete nightmare, essentially the rest of the way of the season. It looked like an Alex Grinch unit, still, even though he was gone at that point in time. I mean, it's hard to doubt Jeff Lebby and Dylan Gabriel. Like, I don't think they're going to have bad back-to-back, or I guess subpar, kind of off and on back-to-back years. I just wonder, like, how much of an overhaul on defense is going to happen. They've still got a pretty high level of talent. I mean, you could argue they have the second most talented roster, pound for pound, in the entire league, but they did have their first losing season since I was an infant child. That is something that happened last year. And Brent Venables did not have any answers. Like, Baylor came into that game knowing exactly, everybody knew what Baylor was going to do. They're going to run it right at Oklahoma. And they did. They did it pretty easily. And that's pretty alarming to me. You have a coach who hangs his hat on that, and your team just looked pretty woefully unprepared and couldn't stop what was coming at them against what was, to be honest, a pretty average Baylor team. And Texas Tech let them have it, late in the year as well. I mean, it just wasn't, the Texas game was a complete embarrassment. Like, that team, for as loaded as they were, should have had some more answers than they did against Texas. And just losing the quarterback was not a good enough reason to get drilled like that. And they did. So Brent Venables, for as good of a coordinator as he is, and I mean, you could argue he's maybe the best coordinator in the last 10 years. They did not have a whole lot of answers as a head coach, but I mean, Dave Aranda didn't have many answers in his first year as well. So I don't know what to make of them. I really don't know what to make of them, but I do feel pretty confident in saying I don't think they're going to be in the Big 12 championship game this year. I don't feel strongly about that.
Josh, can you sell me on West Virginia finishing above last place?
That's so funny. I was talking to a couple West Virginia folks either yesterday it was yesterday. I mean, yeah, like they might not finish last, but man, they might give up in the first month of the season. The schedule is brutal. It's absolutely brutal for them. And I'm shocked they've recruited as well as they have, considering the fact that their coach, I don't know how he's selling kids on any vision when he's not, he needs to win like 8-9 games, in my opinion, to retain his job. So I think, like, if you told me, okay, roster wise, like, sure, they shouldn't be there. But if this thing falls off a cliff from the word go, then what is West Virginia playing for? A lot of those guys will find themselves in the portal. And I mean, I feel bad. Like, there's a situation where CJ Donaldson might get ridden to the ground this year, which, if they do that, they might lose him in the offseason. You might want to go somewhere else and play, if I find a different opportunity. And that could happen for other guys on the team. So the schedule for them in the end is not that bad. But if it goes sideways early, like, what are we playing for? And I think that might crush their season and put them in last place.
Yeah, man, that transfer portal element of, like, now you're not even so much worried about, I mean, there's the job part of it, or, hey, I might have to fire an assistant, but now you're like, I got to keep my roster together. They're all going to go to the portal. And you're right, like, CJ Donaldson would be a prime guy to go get a bag somewhere from somebody. In terms of the newcomers, who do you like the most and why? In terms of this year, yeah.
Yeah, I think UCF's kind of the one that would look at. I think I'll give that edge because of coaching. I am a Gus Malzahn fan. I don't think Auburn should have ever fired him. I know that some of the sweep stuff and the motion gets a little too cute, and it kind of costs them sometimes. But he's a really good football coach. I mean, you think about the guys, like, there's a short list of guys who've had success against coaches like Nick Saban, and he is one of them. And so I think he wants to be there. It's a pretty good kind of riding off into the sunset job. I'm sure the wife loves it down there, and it's a good spot. It's pretty easy to recruit to. You were a successful SEC head coach. So getting guys who are considering SEC schools that might say, all right, well, Coach, Malzahn's offering more playing time. He also has had success with players like me before. I mean, I think it's a really good situation to be in. The one thing for them this year, they've got playmakers. I don't trust John Rice Plumlee as a passer. I think in situations, if you make him a pure passer, it's not going to go incredibly well for you. So that's my question is, if he gets banged up at all, like that thing could head south in terms of their passing game. But they do have playmakers, and I do think that is the one thing for them that helps them. But the issue for all these schools is this. Last year, you'd follow up Tulane with ECU or Navy. That especially now that Kansas is good, that's not happening here anymore. I'll even give you Iowa State from last year. They were horrible on offense. Their defense was gangbusters all year. Yeah, we all talked about the stats. If they'd scored 20 points in the first 10 games, they would have won 7 or 8 of them. It's crazy how good their defense was, but how bad their offense was. That's one of the easier teams to play. West Virginia, as bad as they were, swept the Oklahoma schools last year, and they went 5-7. That is one of the easier teams to play. So that is the challenge. Your Navy's your bad I could say whatever bad version of SMU would be. Your bad ECU. Those are decent schools, but those are 6-win teams in a G5 conference. So you exchange those for Oklahoma State and Kansas State and Kansas, right? And so guys, there's an argument that Jalen Daniels could be the best player in the field in 11 of the 12 games he plays in this year.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's what you're now dealing with in this league. So I think that's the big challenge. But if you'd ask me, all right, athletically, coaching wise, I think UCF is the answer. But full disclosure, I'm doing the deep dives. I want to do my deep dives on those schools later on in the summer, just because I'm so familiar with the Big 12 schools. I think the closer to the season I really evaluate those new schools, the better kind of feel we'll have for it if we head in.
Josh, what's your look? I'll just ask you we can clip this and put it on our Baylor channel. What's your take on Baylor this year?
Up here. I'm buying the dip. So last year I was a little bit kind of tepid on Baylor. And the reason why is Blake Shapen. I hadn't seen enough to be like, all right, this can be great. I mean, the first half was awesome against Oklahoma State, but let's be honest, the injury went down in the second half and he hadn't played that much. And so I think he's coming into this skill group they have now has to develop together. And I said this a bunch, I would not be shocked if he's very good this year because he had a full year as a starter, had a lot of trials and tribulations, injuries and whatnot. I think the one reason I'm concerned though is that they were at their best last year when they minimized how important the quarterback position was, right? That little stretch they had, I forgot who else they played in that middle stretch, but it was kind of in that little moment where they beat Oklahoma. It felt like their best ball was running it. They still have that wide zone. It still kind of terrifies a lot of schools because they're so efficient with it. They have arguably the best running back in the league. I'm going to buy the dip on Baylor this year. I'm not, I trust Dave Aranda to have the defense in some relatively decent form as well. And I think it's also a tough team to beat most of the time when they're at home. I think when the fans, when they're engaged and the team is playing well, that is a difficult place to go in. So I would not be shocked if I saw Baylor in the Big 12 championship game this year. That is not one of the teams I'd be shocked to see in the Big 12 championship game, just because they've got a coach who I think is just as good as anybody at evaluating what happened before and is very honest about it with himself and everybody else, and then making those adjustments.
All right, right now, gun to your head, which is a phrase I don't like, but I thought I would use it. But Big 12 championship.
Kansas State and Texas. K-State is bringing back most of the group that did it last year, and then Texas is just it's their time. I mean, this is the best chance they're going to have a winning conference title in maybe you go either way, the future or the past, in a decade. Because I'm not sure the SEC is going to present that opportunity in the immediate short term for them. So they've got the money in the bank briefcase, to use a wrestling term. They got to cash that son of a gun in. This is the moment for them. They have to get there. And then Kansas State. I I mean, it's just the balance. Like, I feel pretty confident in Will Howard, which is a weird thing because I was ready to give up on him last year. I didn't think he was that good, before obviously he started playing well. And that group is together. The most important part of the team, the offensive line, is there. They've got good skill weapons. Their defense, I know they lost some guys, but they still have retained a pretty solid core of guys. I think it'd be a fool's errand to bet against Chris Kleiman now that he's kind of got that thing rolling. So it's hard to pick two teams that aren't, aren't them as kind of the matchup.
All right, Josh, let's pitch the Neighborhood Watch to our audience here. You've got them captive right now for the next couple minutes. What are they getting? When can they see it on the Crystal Ball College Football channel?
5 days a week, 5+ days a week. Big 12 coverage. We interview great folks like Paul Catalina. He was on the show. We also had Mark Ziegler on recently. Andrew Marchand will be on the show. Andy Staples will be coming on. So you'll see different guests you've seen across the networks. Talk gambling. We use those lines, obviously, to look at the season. We have team previews going through for every single Big 12 school right now. And we hit the conference realignment stuff as well. And we hit it often. And the goal, I appreciate you, Paul, said it. The goal is to have it up by 2 p.m. every day. Scheduling, as it can be difficult sometimes to pin folks down. But yeah, usually around 1:30, 2 o'clock every single day. We're coming out with a show over there on College Football Crystal Ball. It's a great time, and I appreciate you folks for giving me a new home, and I appreciate everybody who has come back, and the new folks as well. Also, if you missed me, hey, I'm here now. Go to Crystal Ball College Football. That is where you guys can find me, and you can find the Neighborhood Watch.
There you go, Josh Neighbors. Josh, glad to have you aboard. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Pleasure, gentlemen.
That's Josh Neighbors, Crystal Ball College Football. Go like and subscribe to that channel as well. It helps us out. Josh, that was a really good segment, and we're thrilled to have aboard. Garrett, you've known Josh for a while, haven't you?
I have. I've known Josh for about 3 years now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good guy. Good guy.
Yeah, really good. Had fun doing a show last night. And so, yeah, that was it was a good time. And Craig, I don't know if you've ever met him or know him, but now you do. So,
now I do. I don't know if I have before or not, and I don't mean that like to be rude. I don't know. I don't know if I have or not. I don't remember because it could have been just in passing. So I'm sure next time I see him, I will remember because now he is working with us, and I'll make it a point. But he had some good stuff there, and like you said, go hit up that channel when you get an opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. All right, when we come back, we're going to dive into your Super Chats. Chris, I got you, buddy. He's got 2 Super Chats for us that we will get into. This is 365 Sports.
I received a text today from Ted Teague, General Manager President at Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco on Loop 340, Highway 6, and just east of 84. He sent me this text that I had to kind of double take, and I love it. To get a fast start and reward veterans, Allen Samuels, through close of business on July 10th, all retired military get an extra $2,000 on top of all the other cash incentives, including the specialty incentivized interest rates, like the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo that has $3,500 plus 2.9% financing for 72 months. That's $3,500 plus 2.9% financing for 72 months. Add the $2,000 on top of that for all retired military, and that grows to $5,500 in cash values and 2.9% for 72 months for military veterans. Retired military, an extra $2,000 on top of all other cash incentives. Allen Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340, Highway 6, and east of 84 in Waco.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB, your bank for life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton. Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jeweler, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is 365 Sports. Are you a Sikkim 365 super fan? Then try out our premium subscriptions at Sikkim365.com.
Welcome back in 365 Sports. All of us back together on Monday, Tuesday in studio, Wednesday and Thursday from just a dungeon called AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool spot. It's obviously been a huge venue for a lot of different events, Super Bowl, WrestleMania, Final Four.
Jonas Brothers.
Sure. I'd go more George Strait or Taylor Swift. You know, people that sell that building out in about 30 seconds. But, yeah, it's a cool spot. It is just a bit cavernous because you've got 100,000 seats surrounding a football field with a couple hundred people on it, and that's pretty much the setup. But it's a cool backdrop, and, you know, I wouldn't mind being on Pensacola Beach like they do in the SEC for spring meetings, or I guess down in Hoover for media days.
Well, I think
don't know
they're in Nashville this year,
Yes,
right?
now it's Nashville, right? Now it's like that's the thing is like you got Nashville, so there's a whole scene there. Pac-12 in Vegas. I'm thinking, you know, Arlington's cool. Like, I don't know what Arlington would be like, and I'm not a partier by any stretch at this point, but you know, in my younger years, it would have been nice to have Texas Live there. But without Texas Live, that would have been miserable. So at least you have Texas Live that's around now to give you a little something to do that's close by. But outside of that, of
course, we're there.
Parking lot city.
And we are there during the All-Star break.
Right, they can't even go to a Rangers game because they're not even there. Like, I think that kind of sucks, dude. Like, at least have the baseball. Like, make that the media thing. Like, media party. You go out to the Rangers game. Mm-hmm. I just think that would be the way to do it. But it's the Cowboys Stadium, and it's hard to beat that. And it's a central location for most teams when you're a Texas-heavy conference. You know, so that all makes sense. But yeah, somewhere on a beach would have been kind of nice when Texas is dealing with triple digits every single day.
Yeah. My favorite thing about going to AT&T Stadium early, and they may not do this for Big 12 Media Days, but if you're there on a game day, when when you're the media, you get in early. So, like, when I would go to Cowboys games, like, while they're testing out, like, you'll hear, like, this is the referee mic check and all that stuff. It's pretty mundane. But on the gigantic Jerrytron there that wraps around the whole, there's, 4 sides of it, they just show this highlight video of every big, like, concert or event that's ever been there. And it is wild to jump from like, oh, look, there's Shakira, and then you're like, oh, here's George Strait, and then there's a basketball game and a football game and WrestleMania and monster trucks and everything.
A better look at it when you walk in the tunnel area, like where you'd go to the locker rooms, and there's a little room specifically on one end zone where they keep all the banners and stuff from their various events. So you see the WrestleMania banner from when that was hanging. You see, the Super Bowl banner from when that was hanging, all the Final Four stuff, and et cetera. And it's just like a little room, which is all these things hanging. It's pretty cool to see. And it's just probably a 1/100th of the events they've actually had there when you start counting boxing. And, they've had everything there. It's a cool venue. It's still one of the best in the entire world. But if they were to shake things up a little bit with the new Big 12, I'd be totally okay with that and would be all for it.
Send us down to Orlando.
Yeah, like that. I think that would be great. I understand that would be a bit more travel for pretty much everybody other than UCF. But
let's go to Park Cities in the summer.
I'd be fine with that. Like I said, there's some options out there now, and so that would be cool. Maybe that's in the works for in the future, but hard not to look at folks in Nashville or Las Vegas and go like, that'd be cool.
All right, look, if we're going to do Big 12 Mexico, then, Cabo, let's...
Not Tijuana. No. Yeah, I don't think you want a bunch of media guys running around Tijuana necessarily, but Cabo would be cool.
That would have been the Dan Beebe Big 12 Mexico.
Yeah. Cabo would be cool. I don't even know where Cancun stands. Like, is that more of like for the younger kids still, or is that? I don't know.
I don't even know.
I don't know. I don't go to Mexico very often.
Spring breakers, where do you go? Cabo or Cancun, Puerto Vallarta.
He's like, I'm not a part of the crowd. Yeah, so I don't know.
Levi rolls deep. He just went to the Amalfi Coast.
I just hear, yeah, that's true. He's like, Mexico, peasant. No, yeah, I think that that there's opportunity to do everything a little bit differently with Brett Yormark's tenure going on now. Everything should be looked at, and hey, if it turns out that AT&T is still the best spot, that's cool. It's a good venue. I'm not trying to dog it. I'm so used to it at this point. We've been there, we've done that, and done it back over 110 times, and so it's lost its appeal as far as like, wow, look at the. I've seen it 100 times.
I can give people directions in it.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. It's like, here, let me show you around. Do you work here? No, I don't. I've just been here a billion times.
No, I like, and not just like, oh, I think it's over there, and I'm confident I'm right. I'll be like, no, go this elevator. This is where you're going to be. Like, you'll be fine. Talk to Hank. He'll take you up. You like that kind of. That's how much we've been there.
But you also too, like, I understand you don't want to. If you like, you've lost. Okay, you didn't have a stranglehold to begin with on Texas once Texas A&M left. You certainly aren't going to have it post-Texas. You're trying to hold on to Texas as best you can, but you're definitely getting a good chunk of the pie cut off. But you do have, a handful of schools that are all still representing the state, and so you don't want to abandon, Arlington, for example, and, shun it and
yeah,
you got to be smart about that. So I understand that too. And it's one of the world's greatest stadiums still to this day. So I'm just selfish in my desires for maybe a little change up in the future, but it'll be fun, and there'll be a lot of good stuff to talk to and talk about, and a lot of good people to talk to. So I'm looking forward to it.
Maybe it'll just be a year where Jerry has to do renovations, and we
end up back at the Star,
give it a polish, and we go, we go somewhere else.
The Star was fine.
Yeah,
it was cool. Like the first time, I think the second time I was a little like, there's not really anything around here, and at this point, I think it's a lot different.
Yeah, now there is.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was kind of just. Like the Cowboys have a campus basically now, right? Mm-hmm. And there was the campus, and then there was all the area around that was like getting developed to be developed, and the Cowboys facility was just kind of there by itself. But yeah, I'm sure now with the hotels and everything else, it's crazy. I haven't been there in a while.
It's ridiculous. I remember when I would go up there and cover the Cowboys,
and that's not next to AT&T Stadium. That's in Frisco versus Arlington.
It's an hour away almost. Yeah. So I would go up there to cover the Cowboys, and when it was first being built, you go up there in the morning, you get to watch practice for a while, and then you have like an hour and a half where you go and eat lunch, And if like sometimes I'd go like Machota and Hellman, we'd go to lunch or something, but sometimes you're there and none of those guys are there yet. They're coming. They don't need to see whatever you're going to see, or they're not there. And so I'd be there and be like, oh, I guess I'm just going to go grab lunch. And there wasn't anybody really to go. And then a year and a half later, I go back to the same exact thing. And it's like, oh, there's 50 places I can go.
Right,
and I don't have to get in my car now. I can just walk across the street. There's all these places. All right, let's get to these 3 super chats. And then we're going to replay Phil Bennett from the other day because he was so good and is always great. But we want to replay Phil Bennett here in the last hour. Kim Coulter, thanks for sticking up for us with a guy who was calling us clowns earlier on the chat. Appreciate it. But, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Really appreciate you, Kim, and everything that you do. Chris has sent us 2 super chats. Guys, Antonio Brown destroyed an Arena League team in less than 4 months, and the WNBA has never generated positive cash flow in their 27 seasons, yet clamor for pay increases. Is the world nuts? Well, yes, the world is nuts. The world's always been nuts. It just goes through phases where it's a little less nuts than it was the years before it and the years after it. So we are in one of those phases where I don't think it's ever going to be less nuts than anything. If we can get to a less nuts phase, that'll be great. For Antonio Brown, he's just a psycho, and everything he touches turns to crap. For the WNBA, I mean, there's a really simple explanation for them making money. It's getting women to go to the games, and they've not been able to do that in 27 years. They've not gotten women to watch the games on TV. Women don't go to the games. I know that men can go too, but let's face it, empty seats don't have a gender. They can be whoever you want. And if women were going to the WNBA games, they'd be making money. But they're not, and they're not watching them, and that's the problem. And that's really who the WNBA needs to be complaining to, in my opinion. I'm not no one can paint me as a misogynist or anything like that in my life. Believe me, you can't. But just bottom line facts, that's what it is. I would love to see the WNBA do well. I would love to see every sports league do well. But they've had a problem, and then they've not been able to reach, in 27 years, they've not been able to hit and make money off their target audience. Bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I have no interest in the Antonio Brown saga. I don't even know what he's done here of late. I think I did see something about the team that he was he running the team or part of the team? What exactly was it?
I think he was like a player coach type thing.
Okay, yeah, and he's out now, and yeah, I mean, he's just a train wreck. I don't really get entertained by his antics at this point or follow them, so I don't really have much knowledge of that situation. The WNBA thing, I mean, that's a story I probably talked about in the same frame, as far as the kind of picture you painted there. I've been talking about that for years. That is what it is. Like Paul said quite a bit there, and outside of that, good luck to him. But it's it is what it is at this point. I mean, I'm sure there are ways to grow it and all that, but as far as the argument of pay and all that, I have no interest in talking about that or really any strong opinions on that.
No. I don't like Antonio Brown's just a weird dude, and but the WNBA is a thing. Look, and they're some players that are trying to start a league that plays in the off season of the WNBA, but I don't know how that's that's kind of the Michael Scott, I'm going to start another paper company and another paper company and another paper company. Well, yeah. The subsidized league from the NBA is not making money. You need to focus on how can you get that money from your target audience, which part of the problem I do think is they've been targeting the wrong audience for a long time. I think they clearly haven't done a good enough job of getting women over into watching it. Targeting a male audience is just not going to work. It's just not going to, for whatever reasons you want to paint that, but that's who you need to target. And Chris also said in a $5 super chat, guys, do you see the stadium elevation in addition to the cold weather late in the season as the best home field advantage in the new Big 12? And I assume he is talking about BYU.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, I know Baylor had an interesting experience there last year just in terms of the crowd noise and the turnout and the excitement level and just the road atmosphere. So I think that'll be a nice challenge for everybody who's going there maybe for the first time or the first time in a long time. And that should, especially at night late in the season, make for some interesting games. And I want to say, I was just looking at their schedule the other day, and I forget who they have late in the year, but there will be a couple of those games, where that could potentially come into play. They host Oklahoma. That could be a cold game and at night, and could be a lot of fun. They host Iowa State, and really that's about it for the second half. They're on the road quite a bit. They're at Austin, at Morgantown, at Stillwater in 3 of their last 5. But hosting BYU and Oklahoma State there in mid-November, that could get interesting. And, I think that'll be a really cool atmosphere and could be a challenge, because I definitely saw that with Baylor. That crowd had an impact on the game and the outcome eventually. So absolutely.
Well, Baylor lost it. I mean, Baylor's not done, and I'm just talking about them specifically, but they've not done well in cold weather games over their history.
Right.
Iowa State a couple years ago on the road was about 20 degrees. They didn't do well in that game. Because they're not normally very good in Ames. I don't know if they've ever played West Virginia when it's been legit cold in West Virginia, but I don't need to go very far down the road to tell you the tragedy that was the bowl game this year in 5-degree temperatures that Air Force dominated them in. I don't think the cold was completely to blame for that, but it was a very large factor. I think that especially the teams in Texas that might get one cold weather game a year at their place, at their own house. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see when you have to go there late in the year and could get some snow flurries or a straight up snow drift in Utah in November. When we come back, Phil Bennett, one of the best that we have on this show. We had him on a Wednesday. Want to re-rack that again. We don't do that too often, but it's the summertime, and a lot of people are on vacation. But Phil joined us on Wednesday. That's coming up next. It's 365 Sports.
Looking for power, performance, adventure, or luxury? We've got it all at Allen Samuels in Waco. Shop the greatest selection of brand new inventory and find the vehicle that's right for you. Get amazing deals during the Make This the Summer sales event on new Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, Chrysler sedans, minivans, or a sporty Dodge. At Allen Samuels, we're committed to taking care of our customers, and that means having as much new inventory on hand for you to choose from. Shop AllenSamuelsDCJ.com or come in to see us today at Allen Samuels in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes. Cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links. Fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is brought to you by Edward Jones Investments and financial advisor Chuck Verno, who'll navigate you through today's financial climate. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's Paul Catalina and Craig Smoak.
We aren't the same if we don't have longtime college football head coach and assistant coach Phil Bennett, former Texas A&M football player as well, with us on the show. It's been too long, and we hope the news is that throughout the football season, Coach Bennett will join us for Truth Serum on Mondays or whenever day he picks after a college football weekend. Well, how's retirement?
Well, I've been, believe it or not, I've been busy. And so that's good. I find things to do. My brother Jerry has had some health issues, and I've been down there. I don't know if you know this, Smoak, but my daughter and my son-in-law have moved to actually Waco. He's coaching at Waco Midway with Coach Anderson.
I did know that.
So I've been back and forth there. Where I just had a brand new grandson. He's in Scott and White right now, to getting a little bit more treatment, but so I've been active and I've enjoyed it.
All right, so in August, when everyone starts to blow their whistles, how much will you get the EBGBs?
I was thinking about when we texted earlier today. It's the dog days of summer, and this is where I used to do all my pre-planning, what I had to do to be creative and to get the depth chart. So it's already started a little bit, but it's different when you're almost 70 years old. I'm not as smart as I thought I was, and I don't have the energy I used to have. So, but I can still talk about it.
Coach, we had Bruce Feldman on last week, and he wrote a column about defensive coordinators who coach on teams that run the air raid, the wide open offense, and you were at the forefront of that. I was kind of surprised he didn't call you, in that you guys were almost kind of like the guys who were working on penicillin before they figured it out, because it had to be, for you, growing up in all these different eras of college football, pretty jarring to have to rethink everything you ever knew about how to coach and have a team ready so quickly to go back out on the field.
Paul, what's funny about that, I started in the wishbone with Emery Ballard. And that was the defensive coach's dream. You played about 45, 50 plays a game. And then ended my career, basically, at Baylor, where we played, I think during my 6 years there, I think we played 16 possessions a game, which is, sometimes more than twice than other people. But, it was a different philosophy. But once we got it down, and I think we've discussed this before, total yards became non-existent, and points became more important by how many possessions. How many stops you could get. Smoak and I used to talk about, if you can get, when I was at Baylor, if we could get 3 stops in a row in the beginning of the game, very few times did we ever lose.
Coach, how similar is what Sonny Dykes does and what he'll be doing with Kendall Briles compared to what he was doing last year with Garrett Riley? I mean, there's a lot of the familiar faces that we just kind of touched on, and then stylistically, how similar is what they're going to try to do compared to what you guys did back then or even what we saw from them a year ago?
Yeah, I think they'll be somewhat similar. One of the things Kendall was a little bit, he had to be different. And I thought he did a really good job at Arkansas of being creative with the players that he had. I know Art and I talked one time, and Art told him, he said, hey, you can't be, and that's one of the things I always loved about Art. He said, you've got to be able to manage and do the things your players can do. And I thought Kendall really did that at Arkansas with his quarterback. He never had a great running back. Their offensive line wasn't great. So he slowed the game, the quarterback run game. He did some things. I think at TCU, he might have a more explosive group of guys that he will get back to what he wants to do. And that's what, Art and those guys did, spreading the field, tempo, and making the defense try to react to them.
I got to ask you this, Phil, because talking about Kendall and also Lebby's at Oklahoma, and we know, coaches are all throughout America since the breakup of the coaching staff after 2016. When you see everybody back landing on their feet, you, of course, Arizona State, and then at at North Texas, what do you think?
I think there was a lot of unnecessary hard times. Randy Clements and Jeff Lebby went to an NAIA school, rode buses for 17 hours just to stay in coaching. And that pisses me off, quite honestly, because they never did anything but represent what they did at Baylor at top notch. Kendall had to go to FAU, and I don't like what transpired and what they had to go through, but I admire where they're at now. I think, Smoak, we always talk about, the cream rises. I think they all have worked their way back through the stigma of the situation to where they're well respected. And obviously, Jeff did an unbelievable job at OU and UCF, everywhere he's been, Ole Miss, and then Clem is at North Carolina. So I admire what they've done and how they've done it. They haven't cried. They just worked their way back up there.
What is Auburn getting in Philip Montgomery?
Oh, it's getting a great football coach. Philip was on the forefront of what we were doing and was just a major role player. When I first got to Baylor and the 4 years that I spent with Philip, he did a wonderful job. He's creative. He has art vision in what he does. And quite honestly, at Tulsa, they could move the ball, but it became such a hard job in other areas that he was still a guy that his quarterback will throw forever. I think he will be a great asset for Auburn.
Phil Bennett, longtime football coach with us on 365 Sports. So, Paul just mentioned Montgomery. All right, so I know that the Big 12 now has the 4 incoming schools. That became official at midnight on Friday. Which of those 4, just based on maybe just looking at them, UCF, who you face in a bowl game, different team, Cincinnati, who made a run 2 years ago, Houston with Dana, and then Brigham Young, who's basically been a Power 5 conference team for a long, long time. Which of them do you feel like is more suited immediately for the Big 12?
I would have to say, and you mentioned it, will probably BYU, because they've played that type of schedule being an independent. They've played in the big games. I mean, I can remember, when we were they were playing everybody who was anybody. But at the same time, I think Gus at UCF has got the commitment level. I think with Tillman Fertitta's backing at U of H and their new stadium, they're building a new football ops thing. And I can remember during my early years of playing, I mean, when Houston, you could remember this. When they came in the conference, hell, they won it the first year they were in it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would never. Now, I think that, and I've thought about this because I've tried to discuss some things, but I think Cincinnati, with a new coaching staff, it's going to be a little bit of a drop off of where they've been with Fickell because he had done such a good job and got it into that situation. But I think they're all good programs, and I think they'll fit the league good.
What do you think about your alma mater and Jimbo Fisher bringing in Bobby Petrino to run the offense and some of the changes that they've made to bounce back from an abysmal 5-7 season?
Well, I think this. I thought last year, and we all know this, and I'm not an excuse maker, but I just felt like that there wasn't a chemistry there for whatever reason. They led the country in the late of games. It was obvious that the game has evolved a little bit. I think Jimbo's a good coach, but I think offensively he needed someone. He's got to take care of the overall program, and they had too many things happen last year that just showed that he wasn't able to. He wasn't at that point management. I think Bobby can come in and help him a lot, and give him time to work with other things. Even to the point, help DJ. Hey, this is what I want on defense. They struggled last year with their 3-3 front, trying to stop the run against Appalachian and against Ole Miss. They got where they couldn't stop. So I think having a guy, and I'm a Bobby Petrino fan. I think I've played against him. I think he's an excellent coach. I think if the chemistry's there, which I saw him in town one time, and I had a short visit with him, and he seems to think that it is. I think that they can be vastly improved. Also, I think the schedule in the SEC is for them is going to be better than it's been in a long time. I've said this for many years. The SEC is a great conference, probably the best, but they're not a true top to bottom conference. If you look last year, Texas Tech, dominated Ole Miss in the bowl game, but the upper level guys, the Georgias, nobody's been able to touch them, and I don't know how many. Can y'all tell me right now who you think the top 4 SEC teams are going to be? Obviously, Alabama's going to break in a new quarterback. Georgia's going to break in a new quarterback. Tennessee is going to have the guy. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I think A&M maybe can get to their first their game against Alabama. They might be undefeated and might have a chance to get hot.
Yeah, I think definitely LSU will be in there as well, but your point's taken there. There are some question marks for sure, and it is very top. They've not just got the top, they got like the elite of the elite with a couple of those in Georgia and Alabama for sure. And sticking on A&M for a second, just as putting your fan cap on, and I know it's a year away, but what are your thoughts on the renewal of Texas and Texas A&M here in just a year's time?
I'm going to tell you something. I was at a function Saturday night. I coached that win, and we're very close. And they, y'all might have seen it, but they did a documentary on him. Anyway, we were talking, and something was said to me. I never thought about this, but they've not played since 2011, and the younger kids really have never valued the younger fans that game. Having coached in it, played in it, I'm telling you, it has hurt me to the bone that A&M and Texas have not played, because it is one. And I've been in some great rivalries. It is one. To be involved in it as a player and a coach, it's just electrifying. And I am tickled to death that it's going to happen. And I'm still hopeful that it's going to be in Thanksgiving. Every one of us that have grown up in Texas, always look forward to Thanksgiving for that reason. So I'm excited about it. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm disappointed it's going to be in the SEC, but that's just the way it is now.
You know, that Thanksgiving, you had Auburn, Alabama, Nebraska, OU, A&M, and Texas. And I know there were other games, too, like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, whatever.
But those were the big three.
Were the dogs, right? Those were the alphas in college football. So, speaking of Texas, they're about to move into the SEC. It appears as if Sarkisian has turned the corner. Maybe they have grit, they have a better culture, they have a little edge to them. Do you see that, or is that just fool's gold again?
You know, I'm going to tell you, it's to me, you've got to prove it. You know, I'm not. I think he's a good coach. I think Gary Patterson helped them immensely on defense. I know he did. They got better. They got sounder there. And, you know, I think Quinn is a good quarterback. A great one, I don't know. You know, losing Bijan Robinson, I mean, is going to be huge. And then I haven't seen them. I thought last year against Texas, maybe if Ewan hadn't got hurt, against Alabama, they could have won that game and maybe should have won it. But week in and week out, I've also saw them against Texas Tech, and they were, you know, they just weren't good enough to beat Tech at Lubbock, and so the consistency and all the different things coming together. I know you can say they've got better players, but I'm going to have to see it.
Phil Bennett with us, 365 Sports, former Baylor defensive coordinator with us with Craig Smoak, Paul Catalina, and David Smoak.
Do you have a favorite A&M and Texas game that you were coaching in or playing in?
Oh, yeah. Coach Roll's last game as a coach in 1976. It was a Thanksgiving night in Austin, and we Earl was banged up a little bit. He still played, but we beat Texas. I think it was 27-6, and it was at that point of the year we had lost a close game. We'd lost two very close games. We ended up 10-2, 11-2, and I thought at the end of the year we were the best team in the country at A&M, best team I'd ever been involved in, the best team I was involved in any fashion at A&M, and we won the game, dominated the game in Austin, and then went on to beat a very good Florida team in the Sun Bowl. You know, of course, you say, well, Sun Bowl. Back then, hell, there were only 10 and 11 bowls. So if you played in a bowl, you were a top level team. But and then Coach Roll ended up, I think he was 54, 55 years old, retiring after that.
What will you miss the most about coaching?
You know, I'll tell you, I've said this before, just the interaction with the players, the coaches, everybody. I mean, I've always, you know, people don't realize how many people it takes to run a program. I mean, I told you this one time at Baylor, Smoak. You know, I was good friends with the trainers, the managers, the equipment people. Mike Sims and Mike Sims is one of the best I've ever been around. Everywhere I've been, it takes so many people to do it, and to come together for one cause. You know, and I try to prove that you can get this thing to a higher level, at a highest level. That's what I'll miss, and getting the kids to, you know, the Tom Landry saying, hey, you know, great coaches or good coaches get players to do what they don't know how to do, or sometimes don't want to do, to get where they want to get. And I'll miss that, because I think you have a calling to get kids to play at a higher level and keep them excited. And sometimes, you know, I tell people, they say, well, you act like you're mad. I said, not mad. It's just a sense of urgency. Mm-hmm. And I think this too, nowadays, everybody talks about you can't mistreat. Kids aren't soft. You know, if they're soft, it's because we let them be soft. I still think kids want to win. I think they want to get pushed, and I think they want to be driven. And now, I didn't say disrespected, and I don't want to you want to be careful of crossing that line. But I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed seeing kids get better, and the camaraderie with the coaches. I tell people this: if you look at my career, I've probably had a career probably as good as anybody. I mean, I've been so fortunate. I've never had a bad job. And we were talking. I played golf with R.C. Smoak a month ago. And we're talking. He said, "What would you bet?" I said, "I don't know. I couldn't say that all of them were good. Every place I've been, I couldn't sit there and say I didn't like it there. Never. Now, some jobs really felt very fortunate that the people that I've been around, I've really enjoyed them, and I thought that we were doing the right thing."
You were at Arizona State for a short time, but you were there. So you experienced Pac-12 football. Not that you didn't play against other Pac-12 schools. You guys crushed UCLA in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego one time. You just beat them up. But being a part of that conference, can you try to describe, it's not that football's not important, but is it different? Because you see this consternation about what may happen if they don't come up with a pretty good media deal with their television contract, and who might be interested in looking elsewhere, whether it's Colorado or Arizona. And you don't get that impression about Arizona State. What was that like?
Yeah, when I was there, of course, Washington they were dominant. They played in the college playoffs. USC had Darnold. It was unique, but you also see some things. It's a big conference. You're a lot of different states. It's more states than you're going to Oregon, you're going to Utah, you're going to Washington, California, Arizona, Colorado, and I think because of the graphical area that you lose a little bit. It was good football when I was there. Colorado was still okay. Mike McIntyre had kept it going. There were some great venues. Stanford was good. It was before they had dropped off a little bit. Utah was good. We were very fortunate going there and play. I've played a couple of times. It's a great atmosphere. I just think, like everything else, I've kept up with that, Smoak, and it's so crucial. I think the league has been totally mismanaged. Having someone making decisions, the leadership of a conference is crucial. Just like the leadership you and I have talked of what you guys are doing at 365 now. I think the vision, the money they spent from, I remember when I was there reading the story of and talking to some of those Pac-12 guys. They built that, paying that rent that they were paying in San Francisco, and they moved in there. And I think there was a lot of confidence lost. And then I think that now you're looking around, they're saying, and USC saw it, and UCLA, and the unthinkable has happened. Their two LA teams are going to the Big Ten, which in our lifetime, who would have ever believed that? I mean, honest, that would have been an April Fool's joke.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, things have changed dramatically. My last question, because you only experienced it, it's only been around for a couple of years, Phil. What is more or was more of a distraction, the transfer portal or NIL?
It was a combination. The transfer portal, after my last year, my first year at North Texas, we lost two very good players, and they were definitely D1 players. They went to UCLA, really good players, good kids, and they did well out there. We lost a couple other kids, and then this year, or last year, before 12, we lost a couple of guys just on NIL stuff. So, what I don't like is there's not a common denominator. I read something recently about A&M and made a statement, said, the state of Texas allows us to do this, and the NCAA said they're going to have to abide by this. And basically, you've got a state law and you've got the NCAA. I don't know how who do you respond to on that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, how is that going to work when you're a member of the NCAA by agreeing to go by their rules, but yet on this one, because it benefits you, you're gonna go by state law. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. What are you hearing on that? How's that gonna happen? And then you go to Florida, they can't do that, and there becomes a distinct NIL advantage with your on-campus people being able to manage what you're doing, and you can't do it at Ole Miss. You can't do it at Mississippi State. How did they make that fair?
Yeah, Coach, it looks like A&M has kind of indicated that they're going to follow the state law, or that's where they're going, because I get a feeling that a lot of their big politically tied-in people help push for that. Same thing at Texas, as where schools like Baylor, we've had Mack Rhodes tell us they're going to follow the NCAA law. It doesn't benefit them to.
But do you think that's also the case, and you mentioned this, Craig's mentioned this as well, because those two aren't worried about the NCAA, even though A&M's been hit before a handful of times. When you're a smaller school or a smaller fish, no matter how good you might be, you just don't want to mess with it?
Yeah, I think that very well could be the answer, but there has to be some guidelines, and I think every coach in America will say the same thing. You know, it's got to be equal. I mean, when you're sitting in there, Baylor, A&M, they're 90 miles apart. I mean, they're going to compete. You know, they're trying for the same thing: get to the playoff, win a national championship. You have to have something. It's got to be a fairness. Now, I understand this. There are the ones that, hey, some have more things than others. I mean, Lord knows, University of Texas, has always been able to outdo the people in the state of Texas. Now A&M has moved up, but I just don't know where the bottom line is going to be with it. Because everybody says, well, the NCAA's done. That's not true. I mean, at this point right now, the NCAA is still in charge of college football. And now, how much longer? I don't know. Is this going to be there? Is this going to be the end of it? That's the question. I don't know that. I mean, you look at what's happening in the playoffs when it goes to 12 teams. A lot of people talk about. A lot of people I know that are very well informed. They think that they're going to take over. There's going to be, 68 teams, and it's going to be the bowl subdivision team, whatever it is, and there won't be an NCAA. I don't know if that's about, I don't know. Have you heard that?
Man, we've heard it all.
We've heard it all.
We really have. We've heard it all. We've heard that, some are just going to send the middle finger and go ahead and see what you can do. And then there's some that are nervous about maybe they've already overstepped their boundaries and worried about taxes and what's the write-off or what can be done here. I know Del Conte sent out a letter saying, okay, hey, we need to kind of, this is what we need to look at. So even the big boys have to still wonder, okay, wait a minute, the NCAA feels like nobody cares about them because they have no power, and that's about the time they want to show their power.
Yeah, I've always wondered, though, Coach, why the NCAA just doesn't take the laws in Florida and Texas, take out a couple of little smaller things they don't like, and make that the rule. That way there's the rules. It's the same for everybody. Now you don't have to worry about anybody's state legislature passing it. Here's the rule. Here's what everybody's agreed to. And then we're going to move on. And based on your actual coffers is how you can work within these rules. Because otherwise the schools are going to, especially the states, are going to be one step ahead of them, because there's always going to be, somebody like the guy in Miami who was getting looked at by the NCAA, and he just called up and told the couple politicians, like, hey, I would like this to go away. Can you please pass a law? And they said, absolutely. We'll thank you for a donation next time around. And that's how it changed.
When A&M went into the SEC, I think it's 12 years ago, a very prominent coach who's a friend of mine made a statement. I said, A&M's good enough, Eagles fail. And he was adamant. He said, there'll never be a blue blood of the SEC. He said, blue bloods are set. He said, they'll be down there with South Carolina, Arkansas, Arkansas. And I'm thinking, what the hell do you think you are? And I ran into him recently, and it's true. I mean, the SEC is a blue blood conference. If you're going to say, hey, we're not going to abide by what we think, I mean, you're sitting there and it's Alabama, it's Florida, it's Georgia, it's Auburn, it's Tennessee. Those guys are, and if I just don't know when you sit there and say, hey, we're going to do what we want to do, how much that will carry. And I do know this. I think that one of the great things about that conference is they've always had a commissioner that dealt with everybody, and it's sort of crazy, but it'll be interesting. And I don't blame A&M at all for trying to get ahead of the curve, but it's got to be good for everybody, I would think.
Hey, it's been a while. Can't wait to get locked in for the football season to hear your knowledge and insight from what happens the weekend before and just college football in general. Phil, we love you, man. Thanks for your time and glad to have you back on the show.
Hey, thank you, guys. Look forward to talking to you again. Bye-bye.
Phil Bennett, always a great segment, always just exactly how he feels, not this, well, wait a minute, I need to probably, doesn't care. He's transparent. And
the future's bright. The time is now. College is what you make it. It's a late night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Aaron Duvall, owner, Texas Beef House. Aaron, it's premium grade East Texas beef, and you're located just outside of Tyler. No hormones, no antibiotics, no steroids, the kind of beef that people want. And then also your label is what catches people's attention as well.
Yes, we have a all-natural, pasture-raised Wagyu beef. It's a USDA label. That means our cattle never spend any time in the feed yard. They go straight from the pasture to the day of harvest, and we oversee the whole process from the beginning of the genetic choices when we make these matings to the time the calves are born, to the feed choices, all the way through when the animals are harvested. So we oversee the whole thing as a family, and we just believe, life's too short to eat average beef. So we offer people a chance to step up their game and try Wagyu beef at TexasBeefHouse.com.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin. And you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, pettycliniclowt.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 things Texas has to do to win the Big 12. Look, they've been picked number 1. We've been talking about it for a couple of days now, but these are the 5 things that they have to do in order to make sure that they win the Big 12. Number 5, the simplest one is replace Bijan Robinson. They've got the depth to do it, and they probably will do it, but you can't have this list without saying Bijan Robinson is a huge person you got to replace, because he's one of the best running backs we've seen in the last decade in college football. He's drafted 8th overall. Yes, they've always been able to kind of roll through running backs there, but he was very special, and Jonathan Brooks, Jaden Blue, they should be up to the task. They're not expected to be Bijan Robinson. You got to replace him, and you have to replace Roschon Johnson as well. That's a 1-2 punch that was really good in the running game. They have to do that. I think that they can. I think this is probably the easiest one of the list to do, but you can't have this list without mentioning Bijan.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some drop-off unless they just have another top 10 type pick on campus, which they very well may, but I think even those guys are young at this point, so to expect them to, perform the way Bijan did after a bit of seasoning is, not fair, and he's just an all-world talent to begin with. So, yeah, I mean, he's going to leave big shoes. I think they can mostly fill them, at least initially. Beyond that, I think they'll be pretty okay, but there's just certain moments in games where he makes a move that not everybody else can make that's just, separates him as being the special type of player that he is. So they'll miss some, but I don't think this is something where it's a giant hole on their roster.
No, but I couldn't not have him on the list. Number 4, win more than 9 games, something that Steve Sarkisian has not done in his head coaching career, and this team is primed to do it. But if they're going to win this league, for sure, now, they might be able to win it at 9 games. We don't know. But, for sure to win this league, they've got to win more than 9 games. They're going to be favored in 11 of the 12 games, absolutely. And they need to, probably be 11-1 or 10-2 if they go into the Big 12 championship game to ensure that they can do that. So they've got to do that. This is Sark's best chance to do that, at least outwardly in the season. But they've got to do that if they want to win the Big 12.
Well, last year K-State won 10 games and TCU won 13. So, I mean that's about right. Would be at 9 wins because they had to have that to get to where they were. So win more than 9 games and you'll find yourself playing for a Big 12 title most likely. And depending on how many more, like you said, maybe a college football playoff or something along those lines. I'm not going that far with it. Like I did. Select him as my favorite to win the conference, but I don't know that I'm jumping on the college football playoff train.
Well, they're 10-2; they're not going to be in the playoff, and that's right. Where I kind of envision them.
Yeah, so
close but no cigar.
Yeah, I think that they'll be right in that neck of the woods, but it definitely needs to be more than 9 games. One would think, or it's just an interesting year, an ugly year where everybody beats up on each other so much. Because we've been sitting here speculating about how good everybody's even going to be. Like, if there's so many questions, that's certainly possible that everybody could just eat their own, but that's the ballpark.
Number 3, make sure the stars shine on defense. That means Ford. That means these guys that are picked to be well. Jalen Catalina, they've got to make sure that those guys are key parts of every game and that the defense is not an afterthought, which in several of Steve Sarkisian's previous head coaching stops, it has been. The defense is much better last year, and they seem to know what they're doing there. But to me, I think for them to take that next step, they really have to make sure that these guys that they believe are studs and everyone else in the country thinks are studs on defense are a huge part of why they're winning games.
They've got some talent, as you mentioned, and, I'll just take however it gets done. I don't care if it's a team of just no-names or if it's, 3 or 4 stars that lead you the rest of the way. I mean, they've certainly got the talent. I do wonder, and I'm like everybody else, and, just how much of an impact Gary Patterson made last year, how much of that is no longer a part of the equation because he's moved on. I do think he deserves some credit, but we just don't know really how much. Like, how much was him, how much was Kwiatkowski, how much was, others that dabble. But they do have some stars, and if those guys are in the headlines and getting accolades, and that means something's going right, and they're doing well on defense.
Yep. Number 2, don't let the Alabama game define the season. And that means either way. That means don't let it define your season if you beat them, because if you think back to the famous Texas is back game, that was them beating a Notre Dame team, and both those teams wound up being kind of average. Alabama might be a great Alabama team. It might be a down Alabama team. You don't know. It's going to be week 2. If you lose that game and you're all excited about it, don't let it ruin later on attempts at other games, because that can happen. Teams can be bummed. Don't let it, here we go again. Don't let it creep into it. The Alabama game has to be looked at as a total one-off for them, in my opinion, for them to really roll through. Like, yes, they won it. Let it build. If they win it, let it build confidence. If you lose it, completely clear it and move on, because it has nothing to do with you winning the Big 12. But if you show weakness in the aftermath of that game or too much pride, then you're going to be in trouble.
I mean, I think they handled it pretty well last year, right? I mean, they just, hey, it is what it was, and if anything, it was a confidence builder that they even competed. So I'd imagine it'll be something like that again. Like, if they lose a close game, oh well, you lost to Bama. Like, okay, join the club that you've already been a part of a few times, and most people have. But I do think there's a risk if they win that game of, like, I don't worry about them losing and any after effects of that. But if they win that game, then I guess there's the potential that you get a little over your skis as far as how good you are. But I don't know. Let's let that time occur first, because that's not a given. Although, there's definitely a lot of people out there that think that they could very well knock Bama off. And, with that could come a lot of, we are back, and everybody's telling us we're back. And, we've seen that song and dance before. So, don't let the saying go, don't let the highs get too high, the lows get too low. That's how you got to play it even keel. And if Steve Sarkisian's a smart coach, and he appears to be, then that's how they'll play that.
Yep. And number 1, Quinn Ewers needs to be draft ready by the end of the season. If Quinn Ewers is coming back for another year, then I think that means that Texas had a bad year. I do. Unless it's just one of those things that's ridiculous. But if Quinn Ewers is draft ready, and I mean he's going to be a first-round talent and all that, then that means that Texas has probably won the Big 12, because that meant he's doing what everybody expects him to do, which is deal this year. But in my opinion, if Quinn Ewers is not in the draft this next year, if he comes back and uses another year of eligibility, that's probably means Texas got close but didn't win the Big 12.
Yeah, I mean, or he got hurt, or, but I know what you're saying here. And there'll be a logjam, right, if he comes back. So they kind of need him to move on in so many ways, because of Malik Murphy, because of Arch Manning, because of just the whole crew and, the quarterbacks that'll continue coming in. So, I mean, I don't know. On the one hand, like, I feel bad for Quinn Ewers, because he was preordained to be like at Texas for 2 years and gone to the NFL to be a first-round pick guy. And, I felt like we got hit over the head with how good he's supposed to be and how great he'll be so quickly, and he'll be a first-round guy. So, last year was a bit of a mulligan because it was his first real year of playing. But, I think this year will say a lot about, where exactly they are. And if he's performing like a guy who's good enough to go off to the first round of the NFL draft, then, like you said, they're probably having a pretty great year. And if he's there, maybe he has to transfer to like West. If it start talking about that, then things went really sideways, and he's probably not starting after a while. And Malik Murphy or somebody else has taken over the reins. So, a lot of eyes on him. He seems prepared for it. He's got talent. Definitely was banged up a bit last year, and really way too overhyped. I mean, he's really good, but dude, like,
let him get there.
Like Arch Manning's already won 3 Heismans.
Let him get there.
But I feel like with Quinn, it's not his fault. There's just such high expectations. So he's going to be fascinating to see. Progress throughout this year and where that ends up when all is said and done.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you to Levi, Graham, Emery, Garrett, all here. Jack McKenzie will be back from vacation.
And maybe he wasn't overhyped. Maybe he'll show that this year. But up to this point, you see why people are so high on him, but it's also like we still need to see a bit more. So, that's going to be interesting. And, Jack McKenzie will be back. That's good.
Be back on Monday. So will Smoky. We'll hear for 2 days and then off to Big 12 Media Days. Thanks to Josh Neighbors, Brian Estridge, and Colin Wilson as well. And, of course, to Phil Bennett. We are off for the weekend, as everybody is. We'll see you on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Ideal MRI is a small family business right here in Central Texas. We're open to support